You wake up to the faint scrape of straw shifting beneath you, the smell of damp earth mingling with the sharp tang of animal breath. Your eyelids flutter open against a thin wash of dawn light, slipping through cracks in the wood walls. You try to lift a hand to your face and discover it's pinned against your blanket, a fragrant patchwork of goat hair, wool, and who knows what else. It's less homey warmth and more, how am I not frostbitten yet? The ground beneath your mattress, if you can call loosely layered rushes and hay a mattress, is hard, unmoved by your stir. Every inch of it seems to protest your weight, reminding you this is less memory foam and more medieval Airbnb with 0 stars and unlimited fleas. You shift to one elbow, and as you do, the floor yawns beneath you. A chorus of muffled thumps, like tiny creatures partying under the beams. Your nose twitches. The air is cold and still, yet weirdly alive. A swirling blend of wood smoke, wet animal dung, and the sweet, heavy odor of a cow pressed against the far wall. You remember last night. The hearth was banked, embers buried in ashen blankets to save fire for the morning. Yet the chill snuck back anyway, like an uninvited guest at your funeral. You flex your toes inside sodden wool socks and are relieved they're still attached. No frostbite prize for you. Not yet. When you finally manage to sit up, light filters into the longhouse in thin, pale strips. The walls, rough-hewn logs chinked with moss, mud, and bits of goat hair, look grateful for the sun's appearance. But you still feel like a survivor in a half-collapsed safari tent. Draft tunnels spiral under the eaves, ready to remind you who's in charge. Your grumpy sibling is likely breathing somewhere behind you, hogging the space closest to the embers. Last night you tried to get the prime spot, right in front of the hearth where you could bask in warmth like a sun-starved lizard. But your younger brother elbowed you back into the frost zone with 0 remorse. You fought the urge to flip him off. It's silent, yet the scent of his body heat, and something vaguely smoky cheesy, clings to the air, making you grateful for your own less sweaty wool tunic. A low, uncomfortable croak echoes through the rafters as a rat scurries overhead, then falls silent. The sound is unnerving, like someone rummaging through your sock drawer while you're half asleep. You stretch your arms, slowly, feeling damp straw prickling your elbows. The slightest brush sends a shiver across your skin. Straw itch knows no mercy. It's the same everywhere. Behind your knees, at the small of your back, creeping into every patch of bare flesh. You take this slow, not wanting to jolt your system awake. The whole longhouse feels like one vast communal radiator, but broken, under-delivering, and full of life forms you didn't invite. You can smell the livestock, a cow tucked into a corner, its breath warm and moist. A goat chewing methodically, like it's auditioning for a soundtrack. Somewhere beneath you, the deep rumble of a pig's snore reverberates. It's oddly comforting, a shared human-animal co-sleep puzzle of survival. Reaching for the hearth, you feel sprinkles of ash on your fingertips, the residue of last night's fire-banking ritual. You remember carefully burying glowing embers in a mound of ashy, insulating blanket, praying in your bed that they'd survive the night. A soft pout of smoke curls from the hearth pit, reassuring you that the embers are still alive. They don't roar into flame yet, but they linger, stubborn and hopeful, on the brink of rekindling warmth. Your senses drift. The air tastes like cold metal with a hint of smoked meat. Or maybe that's just stew leftovers, congealed and cold at the edges of the communal pot. You imagine hauling that lukewarm gut brick to your mouth. Hard to swallow, not exactly gourmet. You shudder, but the smell anchors you. Hunger and hope mingle, a low hum in your belly. Your eyes wander to the far wall, where wooden posts support the roof. Light skates along the edges, illuminating knotted beams and the rough-hewn planks overhead. Between them lie small gaps, woven tight enough to hold straw thatch, but still wide enough to catch drifting light and drifting cold. You note a squirrel-shaped hole near one rafter, self-made, imperfect roof repair from last season's storm. It's quaint, almost charming, until a cold gust sneaks down your neck. You try to move quietly, but every inch of your body sends a protest. Your knees creak. Your muscles remember the previous day's chores, hauling water from the frozen stream, splitting firewood until your fingers splintered, scraping dung with your own hands. The pain lingers. Suddenly your feet feel clawed into the rough boards beneath. In modern terms, it's like stepping barefoot on a pile of expired Lego in the dark, repeatedly, for hours. You inhale slowly, nose first. Cold air stabs the back of your throat. Seasonal pneumonia waiting to strike. You think about survival breathing techniques. Quiet, shallow, nose only, like you're tiptoeing past winter's dangers. You keep your mouth closed, a tiny rebellion against the unforgiving cold, and you exhale softly, warming each breath just enough. You realize you've been still for too long. Movement is necessary, not just physical, but mental. You shift your weight and feel a damp patch beneath your thigh. A stray rush tangled in your blanket must be absorbing body moisture. Nature's sponge mechanism. You tighten your grip on your tunic and shift again, leaving another marsh behind. The longhouse floor becomes a living map of damp spots, each one a reminder of how you and everything in this place is still wet. Nothing dries until the sun climbs high, and even then, the damp lingers like an unwanted guest. A high-pitched squeak crackles from the far corner. A mouse or a rat, hard to tell. You freeze, heart prickling uncomfortably. The longhouse seems suddenly bigger, emptier, and more alive than it felt seconds ago. A bubble of existential dread rises, but you swallow it. This is survival. This is the longhouse. This is home, tonight. In the corner, your best goat stands, eyelids heavy. If animals had Nobel Peace nominations, your goat would win. That goat's warm flank brushed against your foot during the night, like a silent declaration. You're not alone. You're not frozen yet. The goat chews thoughtfully, head nodding like a sagely old neighbor. Imagine modern therapy goats, except this one bleats, farts, and might trip you in the dark. Still, its warmth, its presence, its insulating company. Your survival calculus includes four-legged friends now. You count that as a win. Your mind drifts to the fire-banked hearth again. You decide it's time to coax the embers back to life. You rise, slowly, muscles groaning in protest. Every movement is a negotiation. Warmth versus cold, caution versus necessity. You crouch by the pit, and the embers glow faintly. You poke at them gently with a small stick you grabbed last night and feel the grainy texture prick between your fingertips. Rising, flicking ashes aside, you carefully seek the red-hot spots, little colonies of heat buried under a fine ash blanket. The ember shifts into view, and a sigh escapes your nose. Warmth resists you, but it still lives. You watch as pale tendrils of smoke curl up from the pit, like tiny ghosts escaping the ash. You add a few slivers of kindling, dry wood, stored high under the eaves last summer, and the embers respond, sputtering. A low hiss, a silent burn, a promise of flame. You don't ignite a roaring fire. That's not tonight's goal. You're not reckless. You're nurturing, coaxing, not conquering. A couple of gentle puffs and light whimpers into life. A small flicker. You lean in, eyes half shut, breathing in the warm air as it drifts across your face. This is enough. You sink down near the hearth, settling onto a flattened patch of straw. You can't help noticing how uneven the ground feels, as if every foot of it was tilled by a farmer's plow. You lean against the log wall, feeling the wood grind against your back. A few minutes pass. The hearth glows steady now, enough to hold back the chill. You feel something loosening in your chest, a tension you didn't know was there, the fear of a silent winter dawn. The ember's glow pushes it out, pushing you inward. You listen to the building creaks of the longhouse waking, the wooden beams warming, the thatch settling, small animals simmering around their breakfast quests. Your eyes close again. The floor beneath you feels slightly less like a medieval torture device, more like a survival sleeping ground. You acknowledge each sensation: cold draft at your ankles, warmth rising behind your back, straw prickling your thigh, goat breath warming your toes. Your heart slows. You find a rhythm in this dance of discomfort and adaptation. Your scent registers on your skin, a mix of charred wood, sweat, and hay, primitive, authentic. You realize that survival isn't heroic. It's breathing carefully, waking gently, keeping a fire alive, and relying on a goat you didn't pick, but now need. It's second to second, breath by breath. There's no glory, no battle. There's just survival. In the quiet, your mind drifts. What next? Morning chores? Crisp, frozen stream water for washing? That ancient toilet hole you still dread? The idea creeps in like a shadow. You might not survive this day, but not yet. Right now, you're still here. The embers still glow. The goat still flicks its ear beside you. You still have breath. You release a quiet breath out through your nose, warming the air. You lie back, watching the first real flicker of flame. The longhouse, or the expense-required Airbnb you never asked for, softens into a safe enough space. Barely, but enough. As the fire finally takes hold, you settle in. Barely warmer, but still alive. For now. You stir just before dawn, the faint crackle of embers in the hearth tugging at your half-dreaming mind. The air is slick with cold, sliding down your neck, slipping under your layers. Straw shifts beneath you, prickling against your skin like nature's own acupuncture. You try to stretch, and the motion is greeted by a chorus of creaks, your neck, your back, even the rag-worn tunic you pulled on yesterday. Everything aches. Welcome back to the longhouse. Around you, shapes loom, your grumpy sibling curled into a swamp of blankets, body heat radiating just enough to create a warm bubble you sometimes envy. Above, the thatched roof creaks, moisture dripping in slow, deliberate drops onto wooden beams, their own dismal version of an alarm clock. The slow drip, drip, drip echoes, punctuating the hush. You lift a hand to rub sleep from your eyes. Instead, you brush against what feels like a flea buffet. The little devils are already at work, scuttling along your bedding for their morning feast. You sniff the air. It tastes of smoke, goat hair, and yesterday's stew. Comforting perhaps, but deeply human. Like a medieval Airbnb, but with 0 stars and plenty of unwelcome guests. The thin glow of dawn reaches through the cracks in the walls. Slim columns of dusty light cut through smoky haze, illuminating motes dancing in the air. A lazy, swirling ballet of sleep and soot. Somewhere down the hall, the nosy neighbor's goat nudges the wall, testing for weakness. You brace yourself as a low grumble echoes through the rafters, and the goat's warm breath brushes against the chill. There's something reassuring in animal breath, hot, wet, persistent, that reminds you you're not alone. Your first task, waking the fire. The hearth is a crater of last night's misery, mostly ash, a few glowing coals gasping for oxygen. You slide off your makeshift mattress, feet touching the cold dirt floor. There's no carpet here, just mud, straw, and inevitability. You twist a rag into a bundle and kneel by the hearth, poking at the embers. They snap and sputter, resentful. You blow a cautious puff of breath, smelling burnt wood and warm ash. This is fire banking at dawn, a ritual tied to survival. You coax the embers to life, pressing them gently to the open air. A wisp of flame yawns awake, flickering and then steadying. Finally, like a reluctant soldier rising at reveille, you feed it dry kindling, splintery sticks and the hard-bitten husks of broken logs. The fire grows, bathing your hands in heat, making your bones remember warmth. Your fingers thaw, claw-like, and you exhale slowly, aware of the matchless comfort of not freezing. As flame dances, you stand and stretch, taking a slow sweep of your surroundings. Smoke coils toward the rafters, half blinding but necessary. It chases away fleas and bugs that might otherwise crawl in your hair. The longhouse is already waking. Somewhere behind you, your sibling stirs, muttering into the gloom. A pig snorts, roused by the heat. The fire's glow reflects off wooden walls, half revealing the communal bedding. Straw mattresses lined in rows, interspersed with busy livestock. Pigs curled against sheep, chickens hatching warmth from the shoulders of whoever rolled too close. You drag your tunic over your head. The wool itches, scratchy like 100 tiny woolen ants marching across your chest. Yet it's your shield. Underneath, you're already damp with sleep sweat and night-held chill. You breathe in the smoky, goaty, sheepy aroma. It's not pleasant exactly, but it means life. Goats you'll clean tomorrow. Today, they're your heat source and your uninvited companions. Next, wash water. You take your bowl, a cracked wooden thing stained gray, and step toward the water pit near the longhouse door. Outside is cold. Your breath explodes in a white cloud as you step onto the frozen mud path. The world is quiet except for the moan of drying straw, the scuff of your boots, and the occasional crow of a distant rooster, pretending it's any time but now. You scoop water from the basin, icy, biting, an instant regret. Slosh it across your face. The sensation is electric, a shock to the cheeks, a reminder that you exist. You splash again, trying to wake every nerve, every sense. You scrub at your face with a rough cloth, the texture like sandpaper more than sponge. The cold makes your cheeks sting, your nose sniffle. You gasp. The world and your nose disagree. Your sibling shoves their bowl aside and appears behind you, disheveled and grumbling, eyes half open. You both stand there, shivering, wrapped in the struggle of survival. No mirrors here, just raw realism. No vanity, just necessity. Cold water is better than none, and soap is a luxury you didn't know existed until you read about it in dusty sagas. Your sibling mumbles into the milk. A pig squeals near your elbow. You feel the heat from the hearth just behind you, and you lean slightly toward it, as if proximity could transplant warmth into your bones. You chew, swallowing deliberately. You feel the grit of yesterday's straw crumbs caught in the edges of your mouth. You swallow and pause. This is breakfast in a longhouse. Simple, survival-driven, communal. With your tunic eaten into and your face washed, you slide your feet into roughly stitched leather shoes. They're cold, stiff, heavy. Every step feels like stirring glue. You glance down the long table at your family. Splotchy faces, grumpy postures, eyes half shut. They inhale steam from their bowls, looking around for gossip, for the small talk that anchors existence. You swallow a mouthful of oats and feel the heat spread from stomach to chest. It's subtle, but it's there. Morning chores beckon. The hearth must be stoked for the day ahead. You pick up a small axe resting nearby, its blade dull but serviceable. Outside awaits a stack of wood rafts, splintered logs and half-cracked branches, frozen together. You step outside again. The cold hits your lungs like a slap. There's beauty in the frozen world. The mist curling away from roofs, sunlight reflecting off icicles. But mostly it's a reminder that nature doesn't negotiate. You set to work, splitting wood, gathering kindling, dragging logs closer. The axe feels heavy in your hand, every swing slow, cautious. The first strike splinters wood. Sweat mingles with cold, trickling down your back. You stop for a moment, hands on knees, heart pounding. Maybe somewhere in you wonders, is this what being alive feels like? But you ignore it. There's heat ahead. Back inside, you feed the fire. Flames leap greedily around the new wood, spitting ash into your face. You take a breath, a mix of smoke, sweat, wood, and hope. Your sibling nods at you. No words, just a shared acknowledgement of the early morning grind. The longhouse is now alive, voices murmuring, shifts starting, scents swirling. Smoke dances overhead. You tug your tunic tighter, chest warming from the work. You pause near the hearth, palms cupped against the fire's heat. This moment is a soft reprieve amid discomfort, the slow, methodical return of life to your body. You glance around, livestock stretched across the floor, straw mattresses damp but lived in. Your sibling is fussing with a blanket, shifting straw. The goat snores somewhere near the far wall, oblivious to the fleas and the cold. Outside, the sun edges higher, casting pale light through the cracks. It's day. You settle into a brief pause, the fire roaring, heat pressing against your feet. You feel awake, just enough to proceed, but still heavy with sleep. You breathe in slowly, completely, letting your senses soak it all in. This is the morning routine, a deliberate, uncomfortable dance between cold, labor, and survival. Not heroic, not glamorous, just necessary. Like brushing your teeth now, except you're scrubbing at pine resin grit and goat sweat. A final stretch. You feel your muscles warm, your nose tingle, your hands steady. You lift your axe, ready for the next chore, knowing that every step forward is a small victory over the longhouse's embrace of cold. You're no hero. You're awake and alive. As the fire settles into a steady glow, the longhouse pulses with quiet energy. Wood chips pop, straw rustles, livestock snort softly. The day has begun. You take one final breath of the smoky air, shoulders relaxing just enough to accept the world you're facing. You step outside into the dim hush that follows your morning sortie, the cold air welcoming you like an icy slap to the face. The longhouse door closes with a low groan behind you, a reluctant goodbye to the near-worthless warmth it briefly offered. Your boots, more wooden planks with leather straps than footwear, stiffen under frost. You pull the cloak tighter, though its scratchy wool barely stands between your skin and the freezing void. The yard greets you, an uneven carpet of slush, half-frozen puddles, ruts from last night's chores, and the silhouettes of livestock gathered under the longhouse eaves like reluctant freeze-dried sentries. Your first step is a squelch, unexpectedly deep, and your sock floods with that signature icy dread. The moment you realize moisture is more dangerous than ignorance. You lift your foot, shake it out, and press onward. You trudge toward the latrine, each step a reminder that civilization, as you understood it, is more rumor than reality here. The wooden planks you stand on have seen better centuries. Frost clings to them like desperate guests, and every time you shift your weight, there's a risk. A crack, a slip, a face-first introduction to the frozen earth. You feel your heart pump a little harder, a quiet conviction that you might just walk into a trap designed by bitter winter spirits. As you near the latrine, your breath clouds around you. It's not just cold. It's deep, soul-chilling cold, the kind that shrieks when it enters your lungs. Your nose betrays you first, a sudden sting that sends water to your eyes. You blink it away, wondering if medieval Vikings even knew what real tears were, given the decades of cold trauma they endured. Maybe not a lot. The latrine itself is an elegant architectural masterpiece, a crudely placed wooden seat perched above a pit that might be bottomless, definitely unsanitary, and unquestionably unforgiving. There's no shelter, no privacy, just a half circle of rough-hewn planks and a view of everything. The air smells like a cocktail of last night's stew, fermenting hay, and that unwelcome tang of used cloth and unwashed skin. You suppose it's efficient, everything you need in one place. No frills. Viking minimalism. You settle on the seat, your cheeks fully exposed, and realize how vulnerable you are. The wind flows under the seat, around your limbs, and straight up your spine, removing any remaining dignity. Your legs go numb almost instantly. You sit there, clutching the cloak around you, grateful it covers something, if only your backside. Rats skitter through the pit below. Their claws tap a mocking rhythm against the wood. Flies buzz so close you can almost feel their tiny wings on your cheek. You consider closing your eyes, but if the wind can stab them red, why take the risk? As you wait, you feel the inevitable necessities. Cold, your breath swirling in ghostly spirals, moisture creeping in, and a certain regret. This is it, your mind says. A Viking morning. You've been initiated into the full discomfort package. Your sibling appears in your peripheral vision, shuffling toward their own business. They don't speak, of course not. But the way they shift their weight, weary and resigned, tells you everything you need to know. This is normal. In fact, everything about this is normal. The shared suffering, the early morning shame, the bodily betrayal. Welcome to communal Viking living. By the time you finish, and it feels like a matter of survival instinct, you realize you've spent long enough exposed to the elements that your legs can't feel much. You fumble for the piece of cloth hung on a nail. It's stiff, damp, and smells like yesterday's laundry gone very wrong. You grip it awkwardly and realize medieval bathroom tissue probably wasn't in the budget. You wipe, you regret, you meddle in the gross unknown, and you rinse by shaking it in the icy air best you can. It's still awful. Walking back becomes a test of will. Step by slushy step, your legs try to regain function. Every puddle mocks you, every rutted path a reminder you're not in Kansas, nor are you in anything resembling modern plumbing. A goat looks up from gnawing on a frostbitten chunk of lichen, considers you, and dismisses you as irrelevant. You envy its cozy stomach. You return to the longhouse, the door swinging open to reveal dim interior light and a fire still smoldering in the hearth. Smoke coils overhead like a stubborn ghost, refusing to leave. The floor is claimed by the pig, lying near the embers as if claiming hotel-level comfort. You slip back inside, gingerly crossing over so as not to disturb the positioning. Animals claim prime real estate here. Inside, the warmth is theoretical. You hold your breath for a split second, hoping the fire might respond. It doesn't. It sips, nearly lifeless. You pad closer, toes cold enough to freeze individual nerve endings, and offer a tiny shove to the embers. They flicker. Smoke coughs. You breathe it in deeply. A comfort somehow, in its own brand of familiar acridity. And the smells mix. Stale wood smoke, that goat-ridden odor you can't escape, the lingering tang of yesterday's porridge, and your own damp cloak, which now clings to you like a shameful companion. You push it aside and sit near the hearth, trying to warm your feet, your hands, your dignity. You look around at your family, your sibling shifting under layers of wool, the goat nibbling quietly in a corner, the pig curled for maximum ember absorption. The sensory overload is intense in its absence of comfort. There's no mattress, no cleanser, no gratitude, only survival through shared misery. You think of your upcoming breakfast, whatever burnt mess awaits you, and you brace yourself. But that moment can wait. For now, you're just trying to reanimate feeling in your limbs. The longhouse murmurs with quiet activity, the scraping of wooden utensils, of smoky exhalations, the gentle creaks of the straw bedding. It's sleepy, but it's alive, present, relentless. As you settle in next to the embers, you find an odd comfort in the shared suffering. At least here, everyone's miserable together. The latrine ritual is behind you, its memory lingering in your bones, but fading. Your damp hair slowly warms. The wooden floor beneath you doesn't feel capable of reforming war trenches. You can exhale, and as you slosh your way back inside, still damp and slightly humiliated, you can already smell breakfast. Or what counts as breakfast. You pad back into the longhouse, still damp from the morning's pit latrine pilgrimage. The first thing that assaults you is the heat, coals banking themselves back to life under ash, monitoring their slow, smoky resurgence like a stubborn smoker fighting off a cold. It's not warm by any modern standard, but after standing outside bleeding heat, this feels like a Viking spa, in a very rough human furnace kind of way. You shut the door behind you with a soft thud, trying not to jostle the straw where your grumpy sibling is half buried under last night's bedding heap. They shift, grumble, and reveal a single eye tracking your return. No greeting, no relief, just the silent judgment of someone whose sleep you've interrupted once again. You take it in stride. After all, Viking hospitality is measured in body heat shared, not pleasant vibes. The scent of breakfast, or what passes for it, hovers in the air. It's not bacon sizzling in butter or fresh coffee brewing. It's something more elemental. The vague promise of stewed oats, a stale chunk of barley bread, and the unmistakable funk of goat's milk, sour and sharp like a hangover from something you never chose. But it's nourishment. It's Viking breakfast. Your bare feet sink slightly into compacted hay and litter from the night before. Maybe that one chicken bird decided to roost on the floor again last night. Why not? And left a present that's now flattened into the matting. You step carefully, remembering that every surprise in here is biological and almost never in your favor. You shuffle toward the hearth. There's a suspended iron cauldron swinging gently, its contents spitting small steam tendrils that hiss when they hit charcoal. Curry of oats? Maybe. Gritty gruel? Definitely. You lean in. The steam smells like warmed dirt and committed starvation, like a hot bowl of why did I wake up in cereal form. Nearby sits the communal wooden trench bowl. No individual servings. You hope it was cleaned last night. You're not betting on it. You push a wooden ladle into the stew and scrape a slurp of semi-liquid porridge, its surface reflecting the firelight like a low-rent mirror. When you lift it to your lips, the porridge gurgles a tiny protest, somewhere between a sigh and a groan, as if it knows what it's putting you through. Your tongue touches coagulated oats, root vegetable chunks, and the grit that remains from last night's stirring stick sanding off its edges. A mouthful of grit is Viking exfoliation. You swallow. It's warm, oddly satisfying, and manages to feel like a breakfast, even though it tastes like, I guess I'm alive? As you take the second spoonful, you notice the goat. Your best goat, really, ducking under the longhouse rafters, nosing around for scraps. You swear it's judging your porridge. It pauses, studies you, and then nosily nudges the trench bowl. You hesitate. The goat is half startled and half hopeful. You glance at your grumpy sibling, who gives a barely perceptible eyebrow wiggle of approval. That's goat diplomacy for you. If anyone's getting fed, it may as well be a goat. You dip a spoonful into the cauldron again, more oats, but this time you add a chunk of stale barley bread, day-old, maybe week-old. It was hard when fresh, and now it's a chew toy masquerading as nourishment. You force down a bite. Dry, dense, with the satisfying snap of breaking aged starch. The goat steps forward again. You shove another soggy chunk toward it. The goat grabs it and chews reverently, droplets of porridge flying like sacrifice to Odin's pig. It glows with gratitude. As you feed the goat, the smoky haze from the hearth makes your eyes water, more from morning exhaustion than from flame. The longhouse is a vertical petri dish of odor, charred hay, cooked oats, damp wool, and the sharp acidity of goat sour dairy. You breathe it all in. You're like a human chromatography test for Viking life. If life had a smell, this would be it. There's no cutlery. You're using a half-rotted wooden bowl and a spoon carved out of the same. It's heavier than it looks, though. Maybe the grain's tighter here. You cradle it, feeling the weight of your own discomfort in your hands. You might spill. You've already dripped gruel on the floor. You see a dark stain that looks vaguely like a rune. Maybe it means avoid. Wise suggestion. A nosy neighbor pokes their head through the central dividing posts. Half of the longhouse is one family, half the neighbors. The neighbor's eyes flicker over the scene. You, the stew, the goat, the bread, the mess. They hold that gaze for a second you didn't ask for. You give them a smirk. Not that it matters. No words exchanged, but you've communicated. I'm fine. You're fine. Let's pretend civility. The neighbor moves on. You return to eating. Each spoonful brings the physical sensation of uncooked oats settling in your belly like a brick you didn't ask to build. But again, it's sustenance. Viking grade. It's not about pleasure. It's about surviving until supper, which, according to the day's layout, is still hours away, and you'll have labor ahead of you. So every swallow feels like a vote for I'll live. Your grumpy sibling finally sits up, rummages through straw, and lands beside you. They pick up a chunk of bread themselves and chew with a crunch that's 10 levels louder than necessary. You hear the entire longhouse echo its dissatisfaction. And yet, everyone else is doing exactly the same. Without awareness, you're all united in this gritty morning ritual, the communal attempt to avoid freezing to death. You glance around the table. There's muddy footprints on the wooden planks. Someone forgot to clean their boots. There's a crack in the wall where cold mist is slipping through. A draft. Perfect timing. Your stomach tightens. That steaming bowl starts feeling more urgent, more necessary. Not breakfast so much as ration survival. Your hands are cold, warmed only intermittently by the bowl's rim. You turn the bowl between palms, seeking warmth. You spill porridge onto the straw floor again. The goat laps it up in a suppressed frenzy. You watch the creature lick the ground with uncanny devotion. You wonder if the goat enjoys this more than you do. If intelligence was measured in appreciation, this goat outlived Socrates. A yelp echoes outside. Maybe a chicken stepping on a rock. Maybe the goat again. It ricochets through the longhouse, drawing your attention upward to smoke-stained rafters and a beam that looks suspiciously bowed. If this were a modern Airbnb, you'd call maintenance. Instead, you settle for hoping it won't collapse before lunchtime. More porridge, more stale bread. Each mouthful comes with the soundtrack of the longhouse. Grunts, spoon-scraping bowl, bowls scratching board, goat munching. You swallow around the grit. The oats fluff slightly in your throat. It's not pleasure, but it's victory in slow motion. You drink a swig of goat's milk from a chipped wooden cup. It's lukewarm when you get to it. That means breakfast started early. The flavor is tangy, almost spoiled, but not foul enough to reject. Your throat closes around it, then opens again. You sigh, an internal sigh. Acknowledgement. Each swallow warms a little, but also fills you with dread, because now your stomach thinks labor fuel. Body thinks heat emergencies inbound. You feel your side burn a bit. From hunger? From the cold draft? From the question, why am I doing this again? It's a low simmer of existential dread, common Viking breakfast side effect. You tap your foot to distract yourself. The straw crackles underfoot. You think about layering another tunic later. But for now, survival is in this bowl. Gradually, the heat under the cauldron rises. Steam curls upward, bringing hope that this breakfast ritual, with its faults and humble edges, might yield enough warmth to sustain you for the day. You finish the last spoonful, a mix of gruel sludge and soggy bread. The bowl glistens with leftovers in the bottom, still warm enough to cradle in your hands a moment. You lean back, feeling the weight of breakfast settle. The goat nudges your leg for more. You shake your head. It bleats in disappointment and trots away, perhaps to find breakfast at the neighbor's bowl. You can't begrudge it. It earned every scrap. Your sibling stands, shoves straw off their tunic, the smell and feel of grime coming with them. They move toward the back of the longhouse where tools hang, wooden buckets, a scraping board for grain, maybe a flint knife. You know the day ahead is full of chores. The sweat and grind of Viking life doesn't wait. But for now, you're at least no longer starved. You have some heat. Your body is turning oats into something more than a survival challenge. You stand slowly, the rough wood floor scraping your bare feet. The table's awkward height makes your back creak. You feel each vertebra complaining. Modern life might let your back sleep in a mattress. Here, your back sleeps on lumps of hay and trauma. Yet you stand. You are Viking. You walk toward the door, pausing in the smoke haze. You take one more deep breath of the longhouse environment. Warming hay, goat breath, charcoal, porridge ghost. You brace yourself. The day is only beginning. But your belly isn't grumbling. That's progress. The world outside awaits. Chores, cold, labor, survival. But for one moment, you're here, in this half-warm, half-horrible boat of a breakfast room, and you made it through round one. The taste isn't gourmet, the bowl isn't clean, but you're alive, carrying warmth in your gut and something solid in your bones. You step outside, the door snapping behind you. The air is still sharp, but now you have food inside you to handle it. Your stomach hums with potential. And as you trudge toward the morning's next ordeal, the scratchy wool tunic, the icy water, the endless dirt and dung, you carry the memory of breakfast warmth with you. Not satisfying, but enough. From here on, every layer you add is a clingy compromise between warmth and irritation. You squat by a wooden bench, pluck up your boots, simple leather clogs lined with rough cloth. The leather is stiff, cracked from frost. You mash your toes inside, and they immediately recoil, as though remembering last night's ice bite. The insides are thin. You'll need more protection soon, but for now, they'll do. Next, you fold on coarse wool leggings. They feel thick, but once you pull them up, they cling damply to your calf. The wool's rough fibers snag your skin, an embrace from a distant, uncaring ant. You jiggle backward and forward, find a pinch point in the small of your leg, adjust. You're practicing patience. Wood on skin might be uncomfortable. It's a test of Viking stoicism. You reach for the tunic, a scratchy, weighty mass of linen and wool patched together from old orders. You lift it over your head and struggle as it snags on your shoulders. The neckline is too stiff, too narrow. It's not meant for comfort. It's meant for survival. You shimmy it down, pulling, tugging, flexing. Arms through sleeves, shoulders hunching, hips sliding in. There's a snap of fibers, and you feel the weight of history on your back. Every tunic was a collection of worn-out layers sewn over generations. Your sibling shifts, adjusts their own tunic, and you catch a glimpse of their silhouette. Thin, hunched slightly, shoulders already bearing the chill. You imagine them sighing, not your concern. You focus on fastening this piece of clothing, though there are no buttons, only ties. You find a leather thong dangling from the side, loop it awkwardly through a wooden toggle. It feels more like theater than function. They must have lost half the toggles years ago. You flick it into its hole and wear a temporary smile of accomplishment. Next is the cloak, a heavy wool rectangle, too wide to drape elegantly. You fold it in half, throw it over one shoulder, wrap it across your chest. The wool is stiff. Inside, you find residue from last winter. Dirt, faint goat hair, the vaguest whiff of sour milk. It's tradition to let it bake in the summer sun. When worn, it's like hugging someone persistent who's been sleeping in a barn. The cloak's edge brushes across your cheek, and you realize your face feels chapped. Windburn meets wool scratch. You cringe. but grimace is Viking. You lean out into the yard, tucking the cloak under your opposite arm. It bunches awkwardly. You re-angle it until burden and warmth find a compromise. Underneath, you've layered a linen undertunic. It's damp from last night's sweat and ash. The neckline rubs at your clavicle, slightly raw. You stare at it. You could keep it on more loosely, but that'd let cold in. So you bite the discomfort. You pick up a wool cap, scrap of sheep's fleece sewn into rounded hat. You tug it over your ears. Inside, fibers poke at your scalp. It's a warmth that screams. You briefly consider the modern concept of beanies. Soft, washable, cute. But then you remember, this cap is a survival tool. Still, your head itches. You squirm until the itch settles just below annoyance. That qualifies as progress. Next, gloves. These are leather scraps stitched together. One glove is missing a finger. The other punches through the leather at your knuckle. You slide them on, feeling the cold bite through the leather where it's worn thin. You clench your fingers to test the fit. They're snug, but leave you unable to fully close your fist. That's fine. You only need grip to haul buckets or chop wood. You decide cold knuckles are a fair price. You stand, adjust the cloak, tug at every layer. You test movement, reach for a bucket, twist as if lifting a log. Each layer shifts awkwardly, wool crawling up your ribs, linen sagging around your hips, leather gloves pressing at aching joints. Your body is a negotiation chamber. Every stretch registers. Yes, warmth, but yes, discomfort too. You glance at the longhouse's open door. Smoke snakes out into the yard. Your sibling is walking toward it, hooded cloak dragging earth and livestock droppings into the hearthroom. You step forward, cloak trailing behind you like a banner of frost. The air slaps your lungs. Your breath puffs white above your head. You draw it in, hold it. It paints your glasses of reality. You're underdressed by modern standards. You're overburdened in Viking terms. You kick at a pebble, watch frost crystals scatter. A nosy neighbor opens their own door and sticks a head out. They squint at you, tilt their head sideways, as if reading your silhouette. Is this one going out? You imagine them thinking, but they don't comment. No words. They disappear back into the longhouse. If you weren't so busy battling your own attire, you'd wonder how they manage without complaining. You shift again, tugging the cloak to better guard your chest. You feel grateful for the leather thongs that hold it in place, even though they dig into your rib. It's like a modern compression shirt gone wrong. No elastic, no seam. You rely on brute force friction. You adjust your boots again, push the leggings back into place. A rock from last night's chores is digging into your soul. You shift stance, redistribute weight. Your hands feel raw through the gloves, and you realize the combination of poor leather and moisture has chafed your index finger. You flex it slowly, wince. Changing gloves isn't an option. Too cold, too costly. So you breathe deep and walk on. Your cloak's wool munches dust from the ground as you shuffle. You resist checking the time. Vikings didn't need watches, but you know the sun's just above the horizon. So your morning of dressing took long. That's a problem, because chores are waiting. Hauling water, stoking the fire, helping milk the goat. You swallow around that mental knot, adjust your neck scarf, thin wool piece, to keep the chill off. You squat to tie your leggings below your knee. You curl the thong twice, knot it. The wool bunches, creating a small pucker. It won't last the day, but it's a ritual that steadies you. You rise slowly, jacket riding with you. Each layer, linen, tunic, cloak, sings softly like an old ensemble, not yet in harmony. You step toward the shelter of the longhouse wall, lean against wood planks that are weather-darkened and splintered. You push your back into them. They're cold, damp, bark still on them. You feel a faint vibration as someone inside shifts logs for the hearth. Heat hums through the boards. It's their undertone, another layer of warmth just beyond your skin. You pause and breathe it in. Wood smoke, animal fur from blankets inside, lingering goat smell, and that faint tang of sweat and porridge. A cocktail of Viking reality. You close your eyes for a moment. You feel the shift from being clothed for survival to being armor against the day's grind. Your sibling emerges with a bucket of water, icy to the brim, frost around the rim. You reach, but they hand it to you without speaking. The bucket rim cuts into your palm. You turn it over to test. Cold seeps through your glove, icy water trickling onto skin, reminding you of the moment you dipped into that frozen stream before breakfast. You brace yourself and carry it toward the hearth, needs shifting from dressing discomfort to chore dread. You walk past the goat's stall. The goat bleats as if sensing the cold you're bringing. You stop. Its winter coat is thick and slightly greasy. It's a Viking survival specialist. You glance at your wool leggings and feel a pang. Wouldn't a goat's warmth be cheaper? Hugo, your goat, seems smug with that thought. You move on. You cross the courtyard to the hearth area. You set the bucket down. The fire-banked embers are alive again, but the bowl of stew that was shared at breakfast is gone, replaced by ash and smoke-smudged flint. You lean in slightly to gauge the heat. It's steady, but you feel more warmth in your chest than your hands. That's normal. Body still processing layering. You wipe your palms on your leggings. They leave gray smudges. You glance at your leggings waistband, caught on a twig. You tug it free. One less snag. You step away and stretch your arms above your head. Every layer groans in protest, but gives. The cloak loosens slightly. The tunic shifts down. It's a minor victory. Comfort over compression. You relax shoulders, twist your neck. Your gloves crackle. Your boots squeak. You are the sound of perseverance. You tip one foot, testing balance. No slipping. That's success. You imagine modern dress codes. Business casual, soft pants, warm socks. You let out a dry chuckle you don't say. Too scratchy for sound. Instead, you nod to yourself. Here in these layers, you're prepared for survival, even if comfort is laughably absent. Your sibling returns inside, and the door slams quietly. The wind rushes in, teasing you. You tug the cloak tighter and step in behind them. The door closes behind, and warmth flickers like a steady promise. You're still covered in the official smell of layering. Damp wool, old sweat, earth dust, animal grease. But most of your body is clothed. You might survive midday working outside. You might. The hearth glows. It's midday warmth. But for now, it's just the glow of shared human survival. You place the bucket down. Your layered silhouette dunes the longhouse floor. You take a deep breath. The layers are heavy, but it's the best you can do. They'll guard your core against winds, your back from the cold walls, your legs from frostbite. But every inch is a reminder. Comfort is a modern luxury. You lean forward, fingers brushing the workbench where tools wait. The leather thong at your wrist swings. You lift a flint knife. It feels familiar in your hand, or as familiar as it gets after today's getting dressed ritual. It's time to turn layers into action. You inhale slowly, feel cloth shifting. You bring your hand to your chin, press the edge of your glove into your jawline to test warmth. It's better than bare skin, but still numb. You mull over that. Modern gloves would be nicer. These are washable in stream water, just cold, pliable wax. You pause, take a moment of calm. Then you remind yourself, you've got layers. You've stitched yourself into survival. And it's only chapter 5. You step off the bench, lint puffing from the cloak hem. You're ready to face the day. Errands, chores, labor. Each step will tug at these layers, but that's the rhythm. Layer, move, break, work, repeat. The longhouse door opens again. Goat meanders in for morning greeting. Sibling trundles out with a log. Things are moving. Your story is unfolding. You stand amid the smoke and layered cloth, a living human insulation system. You glance at the light shifting through smoke haze. Outside, frost glimmers on the yard. Inside, heat pulses around embers. This layering ritual is complete. You're awake, clothed in survival. It might not feel good, but it's something to hold on to. Now it's time for the day's first chore, fetching icy water to feed the fire and the flock. You step forward, cloak brushes past tools, your boots shift on straw, and you breathe in deep. And as you trudge back outside toward cold streams and daily work, you carry your bundle of clothes like suits of armor, scratchy, heavy, necessary. Your body is warm in places, shivering in others, and you realize this is all you've got. The morning light, such as it is in a Viking village, doesn't really brighten. It just becomes a paler shade of gray. After the collective chewing orchestra of breakfast finally subsides, and the gritty goat's milk has settled into your stomach like a rock wearing a wool sweater, the reality of the day ahead begins to itch at you, almost literally. Your tunic is still damp from the morning's latrine excursion, your ankles feel like they've already walked to Denmark and back, and your hands, which haven't really warmed since you pried them from the scratchy bedding, now face their most ungrateful challenge: chores. Chores. Not a checklist of light duties you can ignore until the weekend. No, these are life or death chores, existential maintenance, the kind of tasks that, if skipped, end with someone freezing, starving, or developing a case of medieval sadness, which is like modern sadness, but without soft couches or sympathy. First comes the firewood. It's everyone's job, which means no one wants to do it. You trudge outside, the cold wrapping around your legs like it's personally offended by your existence. The woodpile is stacked, loosely, reluctantly, next to a fence held together by optimism and mud. You begin hauling logs, each one damp with frost and heavy with the weight of tomorrow's warmth. Splinters lodge themselves into your fingers like tiny declarations of war. Your breath clouds the air in front of you. Somewhere nearby, your sibling complains about back pain that definitely isn't real. They've conveniently decided to oversee the task, which in Viking terms means standing around and making unhelpful noises while you do the work. Once you've dragged what feels like half a forest into the longhouse, it's time to split it. Not metaphorically, actual wood, actual splitting. You grab the blunt axe with a handle so rough it could double as a cheese grater, and you begin. Each thud echoes through the clearing, scaring away a couple of chickens who've made the mistake of wandering too close. You sweat, despite the cold. It's a grim, wet kind of sweat. The kind that soaks into your underlayers and stays there until spring. Then, the water. There's no tap, no gentle flow of clean, warm water on demand. There's just a stream, some buckets, and your own foolish optimism. You carry 2 wooden pails, both heavier than they look and leakier than you'd prefer. The path to the stream is a mixture of slush, mud, and regret. Each step is a gamble. Sometimes you win dirt. Sometimes you win ice. Occasionally, you win both. At the stream, you crouch, carefully dipping the buckets into the near-frozen flow. The water bites at your fingers like it resents your presence. You spill half of it just trying to lift the sloshing weight. The walk back is even worse. With every step, the buckets slap against your shins, sending icy shocks up your legs. Your feet are already numb. You're starting to question if your toes are still there, or if they've quietly exited your boots in protest. Once inside, you pour the water into a large wooden basin that smells like wet wood and regret. Someone will eventually use it to scrub potatoes or rinse their face. The line between culinary and hygienic purposes is blurry. And now, dung duty. Yes, that. The longhouse is home to more than just your charming family. It's also where the livestock sleep, eat, and, unsurprisingly, produce. Morning chores involve clearing out the straw mats soaked in all the gifts your goats, pigs, and one particularly smug sheep have left behind. You take the dung rake, which is basically a stick with ambition, and begin scraping the mess toward the door. The smell is persistent. It sticks to your nose hairs, your cloak, your soul. You become intimately familiar with the inner workings of farm animal digestion. Every scrape is a reminder that in this world, nothing comes without effort, especially air that doesn't smell like it's been exhaled by a constipated cow. You carry the straw and waste to a compost heap that's somehow steaming despite the cold. That's the only warmth you find today, and it's the kind you can't brag about. By the time you return to the longhouse, your boots squelch, not just from mud, but from everything else. Your fingers are stiff, your back is sore, and you've begun mentally categorizing every splinter by size and location. One has taken up residence in your thumb, and now seems to be charging rent. The chores aren't over. They never are. There's always something. Mending a hole in the roof that lets in too much wind. Untangling the fishing nets that seem to exist solely to frustrate you. Or feeding the chickens who eye you like they know something you don't. Even fetching hay is a trial. It's stored in a loft that requires you to climb a ladder so crooked it might be plotting your downfall. You ascend, each rung creaking beneath your weight, until you reach a pile of straw that manages to be both pokey and damp at the same time. You grab armfuls, drop most of them on your sibling's head by accident, not really, and descend in a delicate blend of balance and prayer. You feed the hay to the goats, who do not thank you. One sneezes directly in your face. Another tries to eat your sleeve. Your favorite goat, the only one who doesn't actively plot your demise, just stares at you with mild disappointment. Time slips by slowly, measured not by clocks, but by aches. The sky remains a flat gray smear. The cold doesn't lift. The chores don't stop. But somehow, you keep going, because you have to. And as you finally sit down near the fire, barely warmer than before, but temporarily free of buckets, splinters, and goat disdain, you realize you're hungry. Again. And unfortunately, it's almost time for the midday meal. The fire you've just spent half an hour coaxing back to life is finally producing more than just smoke. That's the good news. The bad news is everything else. Warmth in a Viking longhouse is less of a given and more of a full-time job. One that doesn't pay, doesn't care about your schedule, and still expects you to perform with frozen fingers. You're not sure what part of your body feels the cold more today. Your feet, still damp from the latrine run, or your hands, which haven't fully unclenched since you tried to chop kindling with a stone so blunt it may as well have been cursed. Either way, the chill isn't just outside anymore. It's personal now. There's a sort of hierarchy to the cold here. The toes go first, then the fingertips, then your dignity. The rest follows at a respectable pace. You shuffle back toward the hearth, eyeing the flickering embers like a starving man sizing up a loaf of stale barley bread, which, coincidentally, you'll probably be doing at breakfast. You settle onto the nearest wooden bench. Well, technically it's a log that someone once thought about sanding, then clearly gave up halfway through. Your rear end registers every knotted inch. Goat, your only real companion in this godforsaken Nordic tundra, flops down beside you like he owns the place. He probably does. He snorts, steam curling from his nostrils. You try to edge closer. He eyes you with disdain, then shifts slightly, just enough to remind you who brings the real body heat to this household. Shared warmth, they said. Bundle up with others, they said. What they didn't mention is how many layers of straw and damp wool you'd need to feel anything resembling warm. You're currently wearing every garment you own, and yet your breath still fogs the air like a Viking ghost disappointed in your layering technique. Let's review the situation. The longhouse has zero insulation. The walls, charmingly described as wattle and daub by people who've never lived inside them, function more like decorative wind filters. The roof, a collage of thatch and structural ambition, drips in places you didn't think roofs could drip. And every time someone opens the main door, the entire building inhales winter like it's taking a deep cleansing breath before sneezing frost into your soul. You stack on another tunic. It's the same one your older brother wore yesterday, and probably the day before that. The scent alone could be weaponized. Still, it's thick. That counts for something. You wrap a coarse cloak over your shoulders. It itches like a betrayal and smells faintly of goat. Not your goat, unfortunately. That would have been warmer. Your mother, who's been moving around like a frostbitten wraith since dawn, tosses you a strip of what might be linen or might be yesterday's curtain. You wrap it around your neck with the solemnity of a ceremonial rite. Fashionable? No. Effective? Also no. But it keeps your breath from freezing directly onto your collarbone, so that's progress. In the corner of the room, someone's child is trying to burrow into the straw bedding like a very determined mole. You briefly consider joining them, but the idea of explaining to their mother why you're sleeping beside her toddler with one hand in a communal fur sack is more uncomfortable than the cold itself. Still, the bedding does call to you. Not because it's soft. It isn't. It's barely straw. More like pointy hay with opinions. But it does hold body heat. If you can find a patch that hasn't been trampled flat or claimed by insects with tenancy rights, you might find an hour of not quite shivering. You slide over and wedge yourself into a divot between two larger humans who are pretending to be asleep, but are clearly just conserving energy like bears in a smokehouse. The warmth is real. So is the smell. One of them shifts, and the shared blanket of warmth briefly lifts like a fart-scented gust of wind. You inhale through your mouth and regret every life decision that brought you to this moment. Fire banking, that's what they call it. You pile ash over the glowing coals so they last through the night, like tucking in a very small, very angry sun. You didn't do it right, obviously. You used too much damp ash, or not enough, or insulted the fire spirits by existing. Either way, the fire was mostly smoke this morning, and now it's a sullen puddle of light, working its way back toward useful. You try blowing on it gently. It hisses in response. A soft, wet sound like a dying snake. Someone throws a chunk of peat on top, which smolders like wet resentment and smells about the same. You all pretend it's helping. There are stories about winter killing entire households in their sleep. You believe them. Not because you've seen it, but because you understand how it would happen. Slowly, quietly, in the hours between midnight and morning, when the fire dies and no one wants to get up to check. When even the goats are curled in tighter, their breath the only proof of life in the room. You consider crawling into the fire pit, just for a minute, just for your toes. But that seems like the kind of decision that leads to stories where people say things like, "Remember when Bjorn set himself alight trying to warm his feet?" Classic Bjorn. Instead, you pull your knees to your chest and wedge your hands under your arms. You rock gently, a Viking metronome ticking out the beat of "Don't freeze, don't freeze, don't freeze." The cold has a way of flattening thoughts, of pressing everything down until your priorities are 1. Survive. 2. Possibly find socks. And 3. Apologize to the goat. Your sister passes you something hot. A bowl of what might be water, might be broth, might be sadness with steam. You drink it anyway. Your teeth clack against the wooden rim like they're trying to escape your mouth. Warmth spreads down your throat like a memory of soup. You lie back on the straw, eyes on the smoke hole in the roof, watching it breathe out clouds of effort. The smoke doesn't really leave. It just sort of swirls until it decides to settle on your lungs instead. Still, the fire's trying. You respect that. A neighbor stumbles in, nose red as a cursed turnip, clutching a bundle of damp firewood like it's a newborn. Everyone looks up. No one offers help. The firewood is wet. Again. But it's better than nothing, which, coincidentally, is also the name of your longhouse. You hear someone mention the word storm. A gust of wind kicks up outside in perfect agreement. The door creaks. A goat sneezes. You try not to take it personally. The day isn't even halfway through, and you're already counting layers like a doomsday prepper in denial. You've wrapped your feet in a second set of rags and stuffed them inside your boots again. Your boots, by the way, have all the waterproofing capacity of a torn sponge. You've never been more aware of your ankles. Your best hope now is shared suffering. Huddle close. Trade heat. Pretend this is what you wanted. Like a group discount on frostbite. Someone passes around a strip of dried meat. It's warm. Not because it was cooked, but because the person handing it to you was recently sitting on it. You chew it anyway. Warm calories are warm calories, and you haven't tasted salt in 2 days. The cold presses in again. Always pressing. Always looking for cracks. You're certain if you took off your tunic right now, you'd steam like a just uncovered casserole. You keep it on. Obviously. No one needs to see that much pale, shivering skin before lunch. The fire is stronger now. It pops occasionally, as if reminding you of its existence. You thank it silently, then scoot a few inches closer. You think you feel your toes again. Or maybe those are someone else's. It doesn't matter. It's fine. You're warmish. You adjust your cloak, then pull the wool tighter around your shoulders. Goat bumps his head against your knee and settles beside you again, a rare act of solidarity. You both stare at the fire like it owes you something. Eventually, the room begins to smell like food. Sort of. It's less of a scent and more of a hint. A promise made by someone who forgot the recipe halfway through. Still, it's something. It means the next part of your day is approaching. And as you shift your weight, knees cracking, blanket dragging, straw clinging to parts of you that straw should never cling to, you realize it's time for breakfast, or whatever passes for it in this charming Nordic nightmare. You shuffle forward, clutching the rough edge of your tunic as you try to remember what toes are supposed to feel like. They've been numb since approximately forever, or possibly since that incident with the icy bucket an hour ago. It's hard to tell in here. Time doesn't pass normally when you've lost sensation in your feet, and the interior lighting is dictated by how well the fire pit is performing, which is, as usual, poorly. The longhouse looms around you in its fog of stale smoke and living smells, equal parts meat fat, unwashed wool, and something vaguely sour that may or may not be your cousin's leftover socks. You inch toward the far end of the structure like someone crawling through a particularly judgmental sauna. Low beams threaten to scalp you every few paces. You duck, though not always in time, and each accidental headbutt into old timber leaves you blinking tears into the smoky air. Someone snorts in their sleep beside the wall. Possibly your uncle, possibly a goat. Honestly, it's hard to tell these days. Your eyes sting from the thick haze that refuses to rise, hovering instead just at face level, as if conspiring to ensure maximum discomfort. It's the price of heat, apparently. A smoldering log pile at the heart of the house that produces more smoke than flame, like an enthusiastic intern who's not very good at their job. You pass by the family sleeping platform. It's less bed and more unofficial livestock cuddle puddle, featuring layers of itchy wool, scattered straw, and the occasional toe-nibbling chicken. You make the mistake of stepping too close and something growls. Hopefully a sibling, possibly the dog. You don't investigate. In the dimness, you navigate by touch, which is to say you occasionally smack into support poles, step on your own cloak, and stub a toe on what might have once been a cooking pot, but now serves as a multi-purpose storage container for bones, maybe? You don't check. Nothing pleasant has ever come from opening containers in this place. A grumpy mutter from the corner confirms that your brother is awake, or at least annoyed. He shifts beneath his fur blanket, which smells strongly of wet sheep and masculine resentment. You whisper a silent apology to your bruised shin and keep moving. The longhouse is long, obviously, but it's also absurdly cluttered. Every spare inch of space is occupied by something: a dangling dried fish, a warped wooden bowl, a clump of herbs tied with what you think is repurposed hair. There's a low-hanging rack of tools you almost decapitate yourself on. Again, you begin to suspect it's been installed purely for comedic effect. Near the central hearth, someone has attempted to organize a stack of kindling into what might generously be called a pile. It looks more like a defeated game of Jenga. You pretend not to notice the coal-blackened soot that's crusted into the dirt floor. Your foot squelches in something. Best not to think about it. Above, the rafters creak. A pair of rats are engaged in what sounds like either a battle to the death or a dramatic breakup. They squeal. Something small and fuzzy falls past your ear. You flinch. Welcome to the Viking equivalent of an open floor plan, where privacy is a fantasy, rodents are roommates, and the ceiling drops gifts at random. Your journey to the storage chest feels like crossing a cursed obstacle course. You sidestep the sleeping dog-goat hybrid. You've stopped assigning firm species labels, step over a bowl of congealed stew, and duck under the drying fish rack. The fish, by the way, smells like regret, and mildew, and something else you haven't learned the word for. Halfway there, you pause to rest on a creaky bench made from a split log that's seen better centuries. The surface is uneven and full of splinters, but your legs are threatening mutiny. Besides, the bench is technically warm, possibly from residual body heat, possibly from an actual body. Again, you don't ask. In this pause, you notice the longhouse's acoustics. They're not just bad, they're weaponized. Every cough echoes like thunder. Every sniffle reverberates with embarrassing clarity. Somewhere behind you, someone breaks wind with reckless abandon. The sound ricochets off the wooden beams like a herald's trumpet. No one even reacts. You gather your courage and continue. The storage area is a chaotic shrine to, we'll use that later, housing everything from cracked mugs to extra cloaks to a suspiciously large pile of antlers. You retrieve the one thing you came for, a woolen wrapping you plan to use as a makeshift hood, and immediately sneeze. The dust cloud is biblical. Retracing your steps proves no easier. The fire has dimmed, or maybe your eyes are just giving up. You stumble over a broom, or possibly a sleeping cousin. Either way, it protests. Someone near the back wall is already chewing something loudly and wetly. Breakfast prep has begun. You suppress a shudder. You're not ready. No one is ever ready. You squeeze past your aunt, who is somehow both asleep and glaring. She shifts slightly, allowing you just enough space to scrape your shoulder along the beam as you pass. The scent of unwashed humanity clings to the air, heavy and unavoidable. As you finally reach your corner of the longhouse, the straw nest you pretend is a bed. You sag down onto it with the weight of someone who's completed a perilous expedition. You're not even sure how much distance you've covered. It felt like miles. It was probably less than 20 feet. You flop back against the bundled cloak that functions as your pillow and stare up at the smoke-streaked rafters. The rats have gone silent, which somehow feels more ominous than the squeaking. Your sibling coughs. The dog whines. Somewhere nearby, your goat snuffles in the straw, offering the only sound that doesn't feel aggressively unpleasant. You consider curling up beside her. She's warm, at least, and she doesn't talk. As your body relaxes, or collapses, you realize your nose is itchy, your feet are still cold, and your shoulder is now bruised from an ill-timed collision with a wall post. But at least you've survived the longhouse. Barely. Tomorrow, you'll have to do it all again. For now, though, you settle into the scratchy bedding, clutch your goat-scented cloak close, and let the smells of breakfast stew, or maybe old dishwater, waft gently toward you. And as your eyes begin to sting less, and your limbs go limp from exhaustion, you brace yourself for what comes next, interacting with the neighbors. Because it's not just your family that makes Viking life unbearable, it's everyone else too. You step from the longhouse's smoky haze into the gray chill of morning, the vestibule door creaking like a weary breath. The air is sharper out here, but nothing has quite thawed yet. Your bones still whisper reminders of last night's frost. You pause for a moment, scanning the mist-shrouded courtyard as the village begins to stir. It's unlike any small-town greeting you'd expect in modern life. No coffee stands, no warm smiles, just a silent choreography of survival. Your first encounter is with the grumpy sibling Olaf, or at least someone who smells like him. As you cross the icy, beaten earth path, he's already hauled water, his boots clomping through frozen ruts. You sense his disapproval, not of you specifically, but of everything. The day, the cold, the mud, the world in general. You feel that judgmental aura brush past. Why are you even here? It seems to ask. You can practically hear the thought, muffled by reeking wool layers and the lingering tang of smoke. The nosy neighbor emerges next, Gerd, or maybe you call her quietly judging woman who steals your hay. She's arranging dung piles with that slow precision of someone marking territory. Your presence interrupts her ritual. She tracks your every shuffle with that steely, appraising stare that feels like harboring both suspicion and fascination. You can imagine how she whispers to her goat, "There goes the one who started the fire too late this morning." Your beloved goat is less discreet. Nubbin-bellioned and slobbering rhythmed, it grazes on scant straw, looking at you with hopeful eyes. You bend to pet its matted fur, and even this small gesture brings a tiny ache of happiness. He is your warmest comrade, more reliable than any villager. His breath puffs against your cheek in soft clouds that smell faintly of hay and farmyard. He reminds you there's still a heartbeat in this place that's not hating or mocking you. You shift your weight, noticing the chill creeping through your layered leggings. The cold isn't just horizontal. It finds a way in from below, up through your clogs, settled deep in your calves like a sullen companion. For a moment, you consider retreating back inside toward the unreliable comfort of embers. But community beckons, even if it's more awkward than comforting. Stumbling forward, you join the semicircle gathered around the communal fire pit, the same one that sputtered to life last night. It's feeding on damp logs that crackle in protest, sending thin streams of smoke swirling into the open sky. No one bothers to clear a path. You just find a spot on the trampled ground, squat, and wait. There's an unspoken expectation. You belong, but only just. Little ones skulk around your boots, their toes red and rough, hunting for scraps. Dried bread, stale porridge, any morsel not already snapped up by the chickens scratching the dirt. You watch them, hearts tugging at you. Why didn't they invent pasta yet? Anything but this. Eventually, one tugs on your cloak, pointing at your half-empty pouch. You break off a crumbling piece of bread, toss it near them. They snatch it and scamper back to the group. All eyes flick toward you, measuring. Acceptance of sorts. Maybe grudging respect, but likely just curiosity. Bartering begins. It's quiet, almost ritualistic. Someone jangles a small bundle of herbs under your nose. You need this for your cough? But you know the taste is rough, and it won't work fast enough. Instead, you offer a scrap of animal hide, thick and warm, for one of their cloths. You both shuffle, both hold breath, both stiff. Eventually, the trade happens. You feel the weight shift, a small victory in a world that hands you discomfort first, and comfort, if you're lucky. Hierarchy floats just under the surface. You sense someone more important, a tall figure draped in a fancier cloak, boots cleaner, posture prouder. You glimpse him, share a glance, and immediately budge aside, feet scraping in the dirt. You know your place. Humble, useful, replaceable. His presence is not threatening, but it's a reminder that this community is a patchwork of needs and debts, woven through power, lineage, memory. You're aware of gossip floating in the chill, not shouted, but carried on the wind like dry leaves. He doesn't bank his fires properly. Did you see last night's shift? She let the goat inside and now the floor's muddier. You hear your name somewhere, maybe in speculation, maybe criticism. You fold that sensation in like another wool layer. It's insulation against loneliness, but also a reminder you're being watched. Your fingers curl around your cloak as you shuffle closer to the fire. You're keenly aware of how warmth travels, upward from your toes into your ankles, then prickles at your fingertips, then hits your face like a small blessing. But as soon as you back away, the cold rushes in again. It's relentless, always there, negotiating for space. You feel every inch of that battle in your breath. Smells layer themselves: wood smoke, livestock musk, damp wool, stale grain left in baskets, sour stomach acid from early hunger. Beneath it all, a sharp note you'd learn to call village if you stayed long enough. But for now, it's just a sensory punch that lands low in your gut. You notice a chipped clay bowl passed gently around. Someone takes a spoonful of weak stew, then passes it to the next. Quiet solidarity, quiet hunger. You wait until it comes to you and dip in. The smell is bland, chalky. You swallow a spoonful, feeling it clump and flatten on your tongue. You chew slowly, appreciating that it's warm. That you're not eating it alone is enough. You revisit firebanking in your mind as you sit, remembering the ash mound, the care required to rekindle. You shift slightly, half looking at the embers, half at the villagers. Someone nods at you. It's small, but directed. You nod back. It feels significant. You are now part of this rhythm of survival, even if you can barely hold on to the ember of belonging. The nosy neighbor, Gerd, steps forward with a thin twig. She pokes at your little banked ember, judging the coals, maybe hoping they're dead. You tense, but the ember resists. A soft glow returns. You exhale gratuity into the rural hush. This small flame is personal, but shared. A metaphor, maybe, if that word existed back then. It warms your palm as you curl your fingers into the dirt beside it. A breeze snakes through the courtyard, rattling wooden planks above. You feel its path, an icy finger weaving through your layers. You press your cloak tighter, the wool biting, reminding you of its presence beneath your hands. You blink once, smoke stings your eyes, and realize that despite the chill, you're breathing less shallowly, shoulders less tense. This communal moment has grounded you. Even if it's rough, it's real. You spot the beloved goat wandering back, tugging half a cloth off a neighbor's line, a brazen little thief. You laugh inwardly. Connection. Precipitation in dryness. It loosens your chest, warms your insides, even as a cold drips into every crevice. You lean down to reclaim your coat, brushing against straw that prickles through the cloth, reminding you this ground is never clean. You accept it. You belong, but on their terms. Time passes in measured beats. The bowl moves again. The embers crackle. The goats nudge. Birds caw somewhere high. You shift your weight, settle deeper into the mud, and feel a calm layering over you. Not comfort exactly, but acceptance. That whisper of reality that says, you're part of this harsh tapestry, and for now, you're enough. Your toes ache less. Whether from the warmth or the mental shift, it's hard to tell. You breathe deeper, allowing the world around you, the steam rising from bowls, the chantless churn of human survival, the small percussive laughter of goat chewing cud. It all adds up to one thing. This village is alive. Not gentle, not easy, but alive. Your mind wanders to the next step, washing off the pit latrine grime, stirring more embers, maybe joining chores. You feel the day stretching ahead, heavy and cold, but now tinged with this bowl's warmth and the embers' glow. It's enough to move forward. So you shift again, testing the fire's heat, noticing how each ember holds tension, the potential to die or to feed. You gather your cloak, pats of mud still stuck to your boots, and begin the slow trudge back toward the longhouse, heart steadier than when you first stepped out. And as you slosh your way back inside, still damp and slightly humiliated, you can already smell breakfast. Or what counts as breakfast. The scent of smoke and stale stews still clings to your clothes as you step out of the longhouse's gloom. You pause in the courtyard, staring at the rough border between straw-packed ground and the icy mud beyond. The rhythm of the day is shifting. You've shivered through chores, nursed tiny embers of connection, and now it's time for something universally dreaded. Personal hygiene, Viking style. Your boots thud against frozen earth as you trudge toward the washing area, a patch of muddy bank beside a sluggish creek. It looks nothing like a modern spa, more like a punishment zone. You hold your breath, anticipating the cold bite of the water. You dip a hand in and recoil, the chill jolting up your forearm like a handful of pins. It's like dunking your arm into a glacier and expecting it to say, "Hi." Grumpy sibling, a silent specter, watches from the doorway, arms crossed inside thick sleeves. You imagine their unspoken question, "Why are you here?" You shrug internally. No answer seems adequate when this is as good as cleaning gets. Nosy neighbor, Gerd, drags over a pail of dubious water, pebbles and frozen leaves bobbing inside. She sets it down with a plop, then steps back to assess her offering, her expression unreadable. You step forward and scoop some into your cupped hand. It slaps onto your face, sending steam from contact to sky. It's not warm, just less freezing. An upgrade. At this point, you're aware of the goat nearby, bleating softly, maybe judging your methods. You flick water in its direction, half hoping it'll leap away, but it just chews more hay, waiting for you to mess up. You dunk your head, mud mixing with water, the cold pulling down through your skull. It's like dunking your brain in iced porridge, then trying not to think too hard. You emerge with hair plastered to your scalp, grit still trapped in strands. You shake it out, droplets flying like tiny missiles. One lands on Gerd's pail. She widens her eyes. You widen yours back. No words, just the kind of silent feud that echoes louder than any argument. You drag your cloak over the mud to use as a makeshift towel. It soaks through instantly, heavy and grimy. Lifting it, you feel the tug of straw and dirt weaving into the fabric. It's not drying. It's just moving around, redistributing. You resign yourself to the fact that this is your new baseline. As you wring out the cloak, you notice the creaky comb someone left behind. A roughly carved wood stick with broken teeth. You pick it up gingerly, running it through your hair. It catches on knots and crusted straw, snagging with each pass. You wince at the tugging scalp stabs. The goat sniffs your neck approvingly, as if to say, "You're still mine." A cold breeze rattles through your layers, reminding you why nudging chores were unforgiving. You pat your hair dryish and wrap your head in linen remnants, your own attempt at a makeshift turban. It's less protective and more comedic, but at least it muffles some wind. Moving on, you kneel by the creek and use the comb-blunted twig to scrape earth from under your nails. Each flick sends shards of brown mixing with icy water. Feeling satisfied, you drop the twig and rub your hands together. watching the mud swirl out in fractals. It may not be clean, but it's better than before. Your stomach growls at the cold, dirty ritual. You glance over at the communal bowl area near the longhouse door. Someone has hung a coarse cloth to dry dishes, an optimistic gesture at best, but it's a signal. Next is grub time. You push off the bank, boots sloshing through mud on the way back. Inside, the combination of sweat, wood smoke, goat musk, and cold sweat adds up to a scent that no modern candle could mask. You rub your damp hands on your tunic, hoping to retain hope. The longhouse is now fully awake. Shadowed bodies shifting, bowls scraping, low humming of chores resuming. You brush fingers down your cloak, brushing off mushy bits of mud and straw. It clings, stubborn. You tug. Some come loose. Others stay, like evidence of your ordeal. You look at your reflection in a smudged wooden mirror, if mirrors existed, and wonder, did you improve? Or did you just change layers of filth? You compact your braids, however modestly, so they don't drip into your stew. Not because it's polite, but because you care enough not to. You accept that this is a luxury, the luxury of caring at all. You cross to the area where the wash bucket sits, now empty. Gerd reappears with a shout of something muffled by the hullabaloo. You interpret it as, finish it already. You dump muddy water on the ground. Someone at the hearth spits. Nature's response. You pull your sleeves down, ignoring how soaked they are at the elbows. You take a long moment sitting on a squat stool, letting your chest rise and fall deliberately. It's quieter now inside. You can feel the echo of chores paused around you, the scratch of wool, the drone of cattle hooves just outside, the distant murmur of birds waking to winter's hush. It's all there. You think of fire banking, the slow patience, the watchfulness required. Hygiene is similar. You pause, you endure, you accept small defeats if they buy seconds of relief. Muddy days teach you humility. You press your hands to your face and feel the rough draftiness under your skin. You're aware, now more than ever, that your body is living in a contested space between warmth and decay, between survival and squalor. Your nose wrinkles as someone passes behind, carrying flitches of fish drying by the door. The overpowering smell hits like a gust. You close your eyes and inhale it. Sharp, salty, lingering. It's part of the village, part of today. You're a part of it too. Still watery, still muddy, still entirely present. Time drifts. Bowls pass. Chores begin again. The creek grows distant as attention shifts to breakfast's cooking. A thin porridge bubbled over the hearth. You notice how the communal bowl tray is steaming slightly. Gentle invitation. A whispered promise of something edible. You stand slowly, joints clicking with each movement, cold and exerted. You pat your trousers down as you rise, eyes habitually tracing the floor for mud globs. You smooth them away, as one smooths a crumpled shirt. Except this is wool, and dirtier, and heavier with survival. Your fingertips tingle with the electric memory of cold water. Your cloak drips. Your damp sleeves slide and bunch. But your heart beats a steady, soot-dark rhythm. You've just washed. No, you've just endured a Viking bath ritual. Maybe the ropey scent doesn't count as clean, but it counts as alive. You glance at the doorway to the next phase. Kitchen smoke plumes, the promise of lukewarm porridge, the rhythm of another communal gathering. You draw a slow breath, chest warming under layers. You step toward the hearth area, boots squelching quietly across trapped straw. And as you approach the fire, letting its glow press comfort onto your face, you listen to bowls clatter and anticipate the next chapter. Midday meal and labor, balancing warmth and effort again, because surviving here is a constant choreography of little triumphs. The low buzz of midday stirs you as you step back into the longhouse, your boots still clanging wetly, straw damp against the soles. The fire-banked embers, faithful if sputtering, send soft warmth into the chill, but not enough to erase the hum of physical labor looming ahead. It's time for the midday meal and the next round of chores. Another test of endurance for someone more accustomed to comfy chairs than dung heaps. The aroma in the longhouse is a muted orchestra, stale smoke, tang of dried fish, and steam rising from the communal pot. It's less gourmet than a modern cooking show, and more like a tepid spa of survival. You can feel the weight of anticipation tugging at your stomach, not because you're hungry, but because in this world, appetite is armor. The more you eat, the more warmth you carry in your bones. You walk to your spot on a wooden bench, settling gingerly onto uneven planks streaked with soot and goat hair. A rough-hewn bowl is passed down, unjointed, a bit warped. Someone grunts and flips porridge into it. Thin, grainy barley boiled until it resembles wallpaper paste, with chunks of root vegetables floating like sad islands. There's a piece of bread tucked beneath it, stale enough to double as a doorstop, but it will absorb the gruel's steam and become oddly comforting, like a soggy sponge you actually want to eat. You lift a spoon, an iron scrapper that sometimes flops from balance, and catch a heaping scoop of gritty stew. The texture is bulbous, flecked with bits of grit you know you swallowed. You bring it to your lips. Warm, slightly sweet with buried root tang. The weight of it in your belly is immediate. You feel like you're fueling an engine with muddy oil, but it's fuel all the same. Between mouthfuls, you notice your grumpy sibling scraping porridge with a practiced slurp, eyes rolling at your slow pace. No words needed. This is a race neither of you wants to win, but someone has to get to the chores next. A shared calculation of speed, silent and competitive, like runners at the starting line, but instead, you're racing to scoop straw, not cross tape. Beside the pot, the nosy neighbor leans over to examine your portion, or maybe just your expression. You hold your spoon higher, tasting the heat, enjoying the minimal triumph of not dropping it. The neighbor sniffs, maybe sniffing for stew or snooping for illness. You pretend not to notice, even though you feel pinned like a fish under inspection. As you eat, the warmth of the gruel seeps into your core. It's not full ignition, but a glimmer of comfort. Your hands relax slightly. Fingers uncurl a little. The bench feels firmer beneath you, fewer stray straw poking you because you shifted weight. It's a small victory. Nothing big. Just a moment that says, "You're here." The goat nudges nearby for scraps, a hopeful prodding of muzzle. You break a small piece of bread and drop it on the floor. The goat gobbles it without ceremony, then turns back to itself. You envy its untroubled relationship with food. No need to think about moisture levels or temperature. Just eat. Unlike you, who's simultaneously freezing and sweating under coarse wool. Bowls clatter. A scraping spoon ends the serving. You set your bowl down gently, the table groaning under its weight. People shift, preparing for the next chore cycle. You feel the pressure in your belly, a thermal cushion that whispers, "Good." But now there's steam still swirling, toes tingling where cold seeped through boots. You glance at the communal kettle at the hearth's edge. It's reserved for pot washing or extra gruel later. It's still steaming. You wonder if you could sneak a second spoonful. Hunger isn't just physical. It's mental hygiene here. Keeping your energy up is a survival strategy, as much as fire banking or layering hay under your mat. Food finished, you stand. Knees pop like twigs. You feel momentarily heavier, more anchored in the world. Though weigh all you like, you're still undernourished by modern calorie standards. Yet, your belly's full enough to carry you through lifting, hauling, stirring, and more shoveling. Outside awaits the tug of chores, firewood chopping, carting water from the frozen creek, feeding livestock, emptying latrines, scraping up ice-frozen dung. Each task is a dance between muscle and chill, an endless cycle of physical output and warmth seeking. The midday meal gives you momentum. You feel the shift in your limbs, less shaky, just a bit stronger. You step outside and gulp cold air. It slices across the moisture in your chest, a crisp reminder that warmth is temporary. You feel hunger morph into gritty resolve. Picking up a chipped axe, you swing. The head hits the wood with a satisfying thunk. Cold vibrations shoot up your arms. Heat blooms from your core outward. A haystack creaks, livestock low, ice cracks underfoot. Every moment is heavy in sensory detail. You can taste wood pulp in your teeth, smell the algae in the creek, feel the sting in your cheeks as the wind whips across your face. It's a collage of sweat and frost, urgency and endurance. As you ladle barley into buckets for the pigs, you see your grumpy sibling working next to you, hands moving with mechanical efficiency, not warmth from physical exertion. Habit. A shared task builds a silent bond, as do shared discomforts. No words, but this is connection too. The rhythm of two bodies working in sync, survival-driven. The nosy neighbor passes, carrying a full bucket of water, hobbling across uneven terrain. They avoid eye contact, but you're equally aware of their presence. It's like passing someone in a gym. Mute acknowledgement, mutual respect from exertion. Despite the warmth of movement, fatigue creeps in. Arms feel rubbery, fingers clumsy in frozen gloves. You pause, leaning on the axe's handle, sweeping sweat from your brow. You can hear your pulse, an internal drum urging you to go on. Each breath is visible, short-lived wraiths in the cold. On the horizon, stacked wood glows in the pale daylight. You need to refill the heap before night. The pile feels endless. Each log you lift is a promise of heat later, but it's also a weight you must carry now. Survival is a transaction. Effort traded for warmth, bite taken from the cold in exchange for sweat tonight, tomorrow. You place the final log into the stack and stand back. Your heart pounds. Your chest heaves in ragged rhythm, small beads of sweat freezing on your neck. Warmth pulses through your core. You have a moment of triumph, like burying a treasure. A hearty log added for another fire cycle. Another ember saved. Another night of warmth on the horizon. But then you spot the goat, bleeding for more scraps, the pigs grunting, the frozen puddles waiting for water hauling. The chores never end. You know what's next. More wood, more hauling, more shifting weight and breath regulation. The midday passage is over. The afternoon waits with tasks equally demanding. You take a deep breath, letting the cold settle in your lungs, the warmth in your belly, the ache in your muscles. You close your eyes briefly. It's not rest, but it's reset. You're poised at the edge of the next cycle, halfway through this Viking day. The sun lightens, but does not warm. The earth feels hard beneath your boots, and as you pivot toward the ice-crusted bucket waiting for you, the scent of the next task, milk the goat, gather eggs, sweep barn floor, reaches you before you even step. You breathe deeply, preparing for the labor to come. And as you bend to scoop up the first bucket of water, its cold weight tugging at your arms and your resolve, you hear the distant rumble of bowls being washed, an echo of the morning, and feel the magnetic pull of routine. The midday haze doesn't bring warmth, just a grimy diffusion of the same cold, carried sideways by the wind. You've just finished what might loosely be called labor, a backbreaking series of small humiliations involving buckets, damp wool, and something that looked like a shovel, but felt more like a suggestion. You've barely slumped beside the smoldering hearth when the whisper starts. It moves like smoke, through nostrils, mouths, cracked lips, settling into ears that twitch like squirrels. The chieftain is coming. You don't know where from, or why, or even how. Everyone seems to already know. But they do, including you. And now everything has shifted. This visit is not festive, not celebratory, not announced with drums or meat or songs. No, This is the kind of visit that pulls tight the strings of every soul in the longhouse. It makes your stomach clench with the same tension as your fingers did earlier when gripping a frozen pail handle. You're not sure what's expected of you, but you're fairly certain you're doing it wrong. The longhouse transforms subtly but undeniably. Blankets get yanked into more symmetrical piles. Children, previously feral, are now borderline statues. Mud-streaked, nose-dripping statues, but statues nonetheless. Your grumpy sibling mutters something while vigorously wiping goat drool off their tunic with a hand that is objectively dirtier than the drool itself. You follow suit, brushing straw off your shoulders as if that will undo the fact you smell like goat bedding in desperation. The place still stinks. Smoke, sweat, boiled turnip memory. But everyone's pretending it doesn't. You join them, suddenly very aware of how visible your breath is in the frigid air. Too much breathing could be interpreted as disrespect. You try to hold it. Fail. Settle for shallow gasps that make you look mildly possessed. The front flap of the longhouse lifts, just slightly, then again, with more authority. He enters, not with a roar, not with fanfare, but with an oppressive silence that drops like damp wool across the room. His boots are cleaner than yours. That's the first thing you notice, which somehow makes everything else worse. He's tall, or maybe he just stands like someone who's used to being looked at. His cloak drags a fine mist of snow behind him, the kind that seems too delicate to actually stick, yet too aggressive to ignore. His hair is braided, not fashionably, but with intent. His beard has been oiled. Someone, probably not him, has made sure it glistens even in the sullen light of the smoky room. He smells like pine tar and authority. It's nauseating in a powerful way. You try not to make eye contact. You fail again. His gaze skims over you like a torchlight. Brief, warm, then gone, leaving your skin feeling oddly exposed. You look down at your feet, which are encased in socks that were, up until 5 minutes ago, drying near the hearth, and are now simply damp disappointments. The chieftain doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. Instead, a flurry of ritual gestures begins. A seat is cleared. Not built, not prepared. Cleared. As if it had been there all along and everyone just forgot it wasn't supposed to be covered in firewood and someone's goat hair mittens. He sits. The movement is economical, almost smug, as though his knees don't ache when he bends them, and he's never had to swat a flea mid-squat. Your mother, or maybe your aunt. It's hard to tell when everyone is wearing 5 layers and the lighting is medieval noir. Steps forward with a bowl of something steaming. You assume it's stew, or melted regret. It's offered with both hands, head bowed. He takes it with one. Of course he does. There is now a very long silence. People shift their weight. One child coughs and is immediately whisked away by an unseen adult hand, like a puppet being yanked off stage. You continue not breathing. The chieftain begins to eat. This is, evidently, the signal that everyone else may do the same, but quieter, much quieter, like mice attempting polite dinner conversation. You are handed a small portion of the same liquid, and possibly out of stress, you thank the person who handed it to you in a voice that feels far too loud. It echoes, horribly. You smile weakly. They do not smile back. You sip. It tastes like what it is. Root-based water, overcooked and under-inspired. Somewhere in the depths, you taste the faintest note of something fatty. It might be meat. It might be soap. While chewing, the chieftain surveys the room. His eyes pause briefly on the goat that's chewing on what used to be someone's sleeve. The goat stares back, unbothered. If anyone is in charge here, it's probably the goat. There's no way to make yourself invisible, but you try anyway, curling your limbs in, shrinking into your seat, folding like a badly constructed linen napkin. You fail, obviously. He looks at you again. This time, longer. Your left foot chooses this moment to spasm, a combination of poor circulation and intense anxiety. You nearly kick the bowl out of your lap but manage to right it just in time. Only a single drop escapes and lands, loudly, obviously, on the packed dirt floor. He watches it fall. You are now convinced you'll be executed. Instead, he goes back to eating. This is somehow worse. There's a low conversation between him and your father, or uncle, or the man who sleeps nearest to the fire. You can't hear what's being said. You're not supposed to. But you can feel it in the way your shoulders tense, the way no one else moves, the way even the fire seems to flicker with a nervous twitch. It lasts for some time, or no time. You've lost the thread of hours. All you know is that eventually he stands. The movement is graceful, infuriatingly so. He hands back the bowl, nods, says nothing, turns. And then, just like that, he's gone. The flap lifts. The cold rushes in like gossip at a funeral. And then he's outside, boots crunching through the ice-crusted ground. The sound fades. Everyone exhales at once. It is not a release. It is a survival. No one speaks for a while. Then slowly, things return to their previously chaotic equilibrium. Children start wriggling again. The goat climbs back onto the bench. Your sibling hurls a log onto the fire with far more force than necessary and mutters something that is probably unprintable. You sit very still. Your bowl is empty. You don't remember finishing it. Your body is tense in places you didn't know could be tense. Your back aches. Your legs are stiff. Your brain is trying to process whether you have been praised, threatened, or simply seen. There is no answer. What there is more to do. And as someone nudges you with the flat of a broom made from sticks and passive aggression, you realize the floor needs sweeping again. Apparently, the chieftain's visit has inspired the dust to rise out of sheer social anxiety. You begin, and as you brush crumbled straw and goat fur into a new pile beside your own feet, you catch the scent of something else cooking. It's not stew. It's not even food. But it's next, whatever it is. And so you move, slowly, toward your next ordeal. The flicker of the fire has died down to a dull glow. Barely enough light to see the mud-streaked floorboards. Barely enough comfort to call it warmth. You're just lifting a handful of wood to keep those embers alive when it happens. A high-pitched wail, so sudden and piercing it cuts through the hush, like an axe through frozen meat. You don't wake up here anymore. You've been awake since before dawn. But that cry, it forces you out of any attempt to slip into mind-numbing routine. You inhale sharply, nostrils filling with the scent of wet earth, smoldering wood, and something sour that might be goat milk lapsing into sourness without ceremony. The cry intensifies, tiny lungs shrieking in protest against the world. You momentarily consider slipping away, letting someone else handle it. But logic evaporates under the weight of that sound. Plus, there's that grumpy sibling of yours, nudging you with a bundled-up elbow and muttering something that translates to, "It's yours." So, you stand. You shift all 20-something kilos of damp wool, fur, and half-frozen leather that you're wearing, and you trudge, mindlessly stepping over layers of straw that cling to your boots like barnacles. In the dim light, you can see the smaller bodies closer to the fire, Viking toddlers caked in filth, mismatched tunics, half swaddled in hand-me-downs. Some of them cry, some of them snort, some of them fight over a stick. This scene, raw, messy, chaotic, is childcare in a Viking longhouse. It's less awe and more, how do you survive this? You crouch beside a child whose cheek is plastered with yesterday's porridge. You don't know their name. Names aren't important when the world is survival. But you know the feeling of clinging to a cold parent's tunic. So you slip a hand beneath their elbow and lift them to your hip. The weight is small but burdensome. The density of damp wool, faint heartbeat against your ribcage, the smell of milk-sour breath. A distraction. For both of you. The floor beneath you cracks. A toddler toddles by you, nose running, snot pooling on the dirt floor. You try to avoid stepping in it but don't succeed. For a moment, the wet cold spreads across your sock. You don't flinch. You attempt to soothe the one you're holding by swaying. Gentle, slow, like rocking a boat on a tide made of chronic cold. Their whimpers soften. You feel their eyelids blink heavy. Around the fire, the other kids are trying to climb benches, scramble into laps, and tug on goat fur. One child tugs enthusiastically on your sibling's cloak, nearly toppling them backward. You hear your sibling grunt, a shifting of a log. The whole longhouse releases another collective breath. A toddler trips, face first into the dirt, and sits up with a loud yelp. No tears follow, only a quick flick of an arm toward their sibling, a determined glare. Sharing is not part of the equation here. You shift again. The babe on your hip burrows into your side, seeking warmth. You press them tighter against your chest. Even your own bones feel like icicles. But at least you're both marginally less frozen. Your senses are stretched thin. You feel every draft slipping in from the door edges, smell every steam note rising from children's wet clothes, hear every creak of straw underfoot. Even the fire's embers crackle with self-preservation. Time stretches. It hovers. 10 minutes feel like hours. Each little snort and shuffle, each thump as another barefoot hits the floor, each gasp of firewood sliding apart. You glance up at your sibling, whose face is half hidden under layers of wool. They're pulling, painfully, on a child's shawl of goat hide, trying to wrap a tiny arm that doesn't want to comply. They sigh, and the sound is equal parts frustration, exhaustion, and camaraderie. No one here is choosing peace. They're choosing survival, the same way you are, holding children that smell like lichens and milk. Eventually, the babe on your hip slumps, heavy, breathing slow, body weight pulled by sleep. You ease them gently onto a pile of straw, their cheek resting in a soft trough you've made. They twitch once, then their body settles. You tuck stray straw around them, half blanket, half prison. There comes a quiet rebel, another toddler, emboldened, creeping toward the hearth. You intercept, gently but firmly lifting them up, and reposition them near the sleeping one. It's like shepherding kittens, but with more sniffles and less cuteness. Behind you, your nosy neighbor, half standing, half shadow, keeps sunglasses on in her mind's eye, watching. She nods, as if acknowledging you've done well, or doesn't faint. It's hard to tell. Collectively, you and your sibling and the neighbor build this patchwork crib of straw and wool by that side of the hearth. Each child claims a space. None of it is soft, none of it warm, but all of it is sheltered, for now. The fire sputters, offers a puff of orange light that dances across scratched wooden beams overhead. You feel the heat. Not much, but enough to thaw frozen eyelashes for a few moments. You squat beside the makeshift sleeping area. Your boots sink slightly into the straw and dirt. Your back aches already from bending. You feel every fiber of fabric clinging and irritating. Your arms throb from lifting. And yet, there is a moment of calm, a lull as the children finally find themselves too heavy, too sleepy, too done to fight. Their breathing slows. The ambient chorus dies to soft snores and occasional sighs. You lean your forehead against your arm, and your breath pauses, both in empathy and relief. Around you, the household hums softly. An ant stirring water, a sibling yawning, a goat quietly chewing on something that rasped like leather. You feel connected, not because it's pleasant, because it's real. Grueling, cold, sticky, gross, but deeply, undeniably real. Behind you, you hear the distant hint of voices. Adults planning what chore is next, nodding at the pile of wood, the fetching of water, the sweeping of floor. The world demands more. You stand, careful not to disturb the slumbering brood. You brush straw off your tunic. You rub your hands together for the dwindling warmth. You glance once more at the sleeping forms, tiny Vikings in their knitted, filthy sleep. One leg kicks occasionally, a dream of something warm. You exhale. It's a long, shallow breath of ice-cold air that matches your mood. Childcare here isn't about lullabies or soft blankets. It's about endurance. And you, my friend, are enduring. Your grumpy sibling gives you a nod, a silent acknowledgement that the next chapter of this long, frozen day is coming. You step away from the hearth, from the children, and toward the waiting chores, knowing full well they won't wait. Not here. Not today. As you trudge back through the haze of straw and ember glow, you sense the faintest scent of lunch being prepared, or what passes for lunch. And so you trudge on, cold, tired, oddly triumphant. The midday haze you trudged through just minutes ago still clings to your lungs. You've just returned from childcare duties, digging into chores with reluctant, sleep-shadowed limbs. Now, as the household hum fades to a low simmer, a different low growl takes over your belly, and then your throat. Your chest tightens, reminding you that Vikings don't just wrestle wood and goats. They wrestle sickness. You stand at the threshold of the longhouse again, boots scuffing on packed dirt. The door is propped open wide, letting in a rush of iced air that feels cleaner than most of what you've been breathing. You pause, breathing in that brittle cold, then step back inside where the aroma of something pungent, sweet herbs bruised in water, drifts from a battered pot near the hearth. Your nosy neighbor is there, stooped over the bubbling brew. She lifts a reed spoon and breathes in, nostrils flaring. You catch a muted grimace. That aroma is strong enough to peel straw from the ceiling. She turns and offers you a nod, grim respect, the kind you'd give a soldier on the battlefield. Illness isn't drama here, but it's as inevitable as frost. You pad over, feeling every shift in the floor. Embers crackle. Overhead, smoke plumes coil, settling on soot-black beams. The pot hisses at the fire's sigh. Steam edges toward your face. You lean in, and your chest tightens again, not just from cold, but from that wave of herbal sharpness. This is supposed to be medicine. Your grumpy sibling is nearby, rubbing a damp cloth over someone's fevered forehead. The cloth is soaked in that same bitter brew. You recognize the scent. It's something like crushed pine needles and bitter roots, the kind of thing that would make modern medicine shake its head and say, "No thanks." You wrinkle your nose as the sibling re-soaks the cloth, tugs it tighter, and presses it down. You shift your weight from heel to toe, feeling the cold seep from your boots. Normally, your feet are numb by now. Today, though, they feel like living ice cubes, sharp enough to make you stagger. You glance down. The floor is littered with grass clippings, bits of wool, goat fur, but here and there, darker stains mark where sweat or blood slipped onto the earth. You swallow hard, reminded that illness isn't gentle. You edge closer to the pot and reach for a reed spoon, hesitating. The handle is slick, coated in congealed steam. You grip it, feel it vibrate as the water inside shivers. You dip, lift, and let a dribble warm against your palm before sipping. It hits your tongue. Acidic, relentless, slightly metallic. Your stomach clenches. You don't cough, though. You simply stand, sipping. Around you, the fire's glow warms your cheeks, but doesn't touch your bones. The sibling adjusts the fevered bundle on the bench. You can tell it's a child. One of those toddlers from earlier, who now whimpers low in a stitch of fever. You close your lips. You don't know the magic words, but you know how cold seeps into tiny bodies, how it creeps and stays. Your goat, your best goat, that one who follows you everywhere, leans against your leg. You feel its rough coat against your woolen leg. You pat its flank. The goat answers with a small bleat and shifts closer. You lean into it. Warmth, weirdly comforting, a reminder that some survival comes from shared body heat. You sip again, letting the brew slide down. It coats your throat and makes your nose itch. You realize your hands are shaking slightly. Not from cold, you think, but from knowing you're drinking something meant to help, but that feels like it's meant to punish you instead. Time drips. You stand there, holding the spoon, listening. The sibling hums, like a low chant, not a song, something easier to breathe than nothing. The neighbor is quiet, but you see damp straw on her tunic where she's wiped sweat, or maybe tears. A goat shifts, arches its back, sighs. Your chest loosens, momentarily. Then you feel a rasp in your lungs, the kind that doesn't bring relief, just promise of worse things. You lean back from the pot, set the spoon down gently in its notch. There's movement. An older family member limps in, leaning on a stout wooden staff. Their face is pale under a deep crease, eyes clouded as if through fog. They sit on the bench opposite the sick child. The sibling lifts a cloth to their cheek, too. You avert your eyes but can't stop noticing the way their body shudders. You glance at your own reflection, if you could call it that, in the shimmer of the pot's surface. Face drawn, eyes puffy from yesterday's chores, hands cracked and red. You're holding illness the same way you hold chores, out of necessity, not choice. Your boots drag as you step away, nearly bumping into the goat. It tosses its head, then shuffles back closer to the hearth, trying to soak in the remaining heat. You follow, feeling its warmth like a fledgling. You slump onto a low stool. The floorboard hums under weight. The brew's scent wafts past again, and you breathe, deep, mindful, as though cleaning your lungs. It doesn't cure, but maybe it soothes. Your sibling sits beside you quietly, shoulders creaking in tiredness. You don't speak. You never speak. But in the silence, you sense they're thinking the same thing. There's no rest until this passes. Illness, chores, survival. You feel your eyelids droop. The keg-like warmth of the goat, the ember glow, the sibling's presence, all pulling you toward a brief calm in the storm. Even the sick child's whimpers have dulled. A breeze ripples at the doorway. Your neighbor steps through, carrying a small bowl of porridge for the fevered child. Steam rises in lazy spirals. Your stomach growls low and weirdly hopeful. The older relative coughs, gravelly, relentless, a reminder this isn't lessons, it's life. You shift in your seat, pressing a hand to your chest. The ember warmth touches your spine, and you draw a breath that doesn't hurt as much. Around you, the longhouse settles into a fragile lull. No one can sleep, but everything slows, like the world's holding its breath. You stand, carefully, so the coughing doesn't echo. You stretch your legs. They protest in dull thuds. You feel the chill again, deeper than before. But you also feel something like compassion. Brittle, tender, carved from exhaustion. You collect your spoon, refill the pot with cold water from the kettle, hold it over the embers until the surface ripples. You want another sip. Maybe you need it. Your goat nudges your hand. You pat and hold on to that pulse of warmth. Nearby, your sibling rubs the cloth against the older relative's forehead. You both look at each other, not speaking, but understanding that caring for sickness is a long haul. As you step away, you brush straw from your tunic again. The lingering scent of herbs follows you, mixed with wood smoke and goat. It smells like endurance. You cross the room slowly, every footstep a claim that you're still here, still fighting. The sick child's whimper floats behind you like a sad lullaby. You near the door. The cold air from outside shifts your hair, kisses your cheek. You feel it, a reminder the world outside doesn't care if you're ill. Frost waits. Hunger waits. The cold waits. You pause. Look back once. A long look. Embers glow, shadows slant. A family caring for half-alive bodies. You inhale, releasing a weary exhale. And as you step out to fetch more water from the near-frozen stream, the household hum of illness and care recedes behind you. You're still catching your breath from this morning's chores, sweat cooling on your neck, drizzle of grit embedded under your fingernails, when that familiar hush washes across the longhouse again. The loom in the corner, which earlier felt distant and abstract, suddenly dominates your awareness. A lean, weathered hand gestures you over, and despite the ache already radiating from your shoulders and back, you find yourself shuffling forward. There's no spoken invitation, but no argument either. You're drafted. Your boots click against hardened straw and compacted mud. The loom looms large, massive beams, a mesh of taut threads waiting for human persistence. It smells faintly of old smoke and damp sheep, mixed with the sour tang of unfinished stew simmering low in the hearth. You reach out, and the warp threads feel like steel wires under your fingers, cold, rough, relentless. Your hands fumble. The wool is coarse, scratchy enough to make you swear silently, though no words escape. You loop the weft strand over a warp thread and under the next, each pass an exercise in slow precision. Fingers ache. Your breath slows as you settle into the motion, an almost meditative rhythm, if meditation involved mild torture. Across the room, you sense motion. The grumpy sibling from midday is nearby, hunched at her own loom, silent. She threads her fingers through strands with practiced ease. You swallow the instinct to compare your clumsy loops to hers. The loom creaks softly, a low, steady groan that echoes in your chest. It becomes a heartbeat, a lullaby for exhaustion. Time stretches. Sunlight flickers through smoke and rafters. You feel the weave catching on calloused skin, the wool tugging. You picture the luxury of brushed cotton sheets, practically a fantasy. Your tongue feels thick, dry. You blink at the loom's warp and weft, confused at how your world has become so narrow, so thread-thin. A haul of firewood interrupts the trance. You rise stiffly, muscles snapping in protest. Arms burn, legs protest. But you drag the logs closer to the hearth, drop them in, and sort kindling from coals. A nosy neighbor brushes past, elbow knocks the stove, embers hiss. You flinch and step back, coal sparks embed in straw, small fires or small reminders. You're not home. Not yet. Back to the loom. You wrap more wool, half-coerced calm returning. Your hands move with intention, each motion slow, weighted. You think of spinning wheels of home, the electric whir, ease, everything so divorced from sweat. Here, every inch woven is forged through bodily tension. Your stomach rumbles. You've forgotten to eat since morning. Those tiny chunks of bread and goat's milk were as distant as stars. Thankfully, the midday stew has dwindled. You're handed a bowl, shaky hands from the loom. The gruel is lukewarm, gritty against your teeth. You chew. It's more texture than flavor, like swallowing coarse sand. Still, it fuels you enough to return. Back to weaving. Wool snarls. You have to start again. Undo a section the width of your palm. Fingers bleed from pulling at stubborn knots. You bite down on your own lip to stop a sigh. You glance at the goat, dozing against the far wall. Its breathing slow, stubby hooves, kneading straw. You sense solidarity. Neither of you belongs in this schedule, but this is the rhythm you dance to. Hours pass, or minutes, time drifts. The loom becomes a dull obsession. Threads, rhythm, ache. You wonder if there's a Viking name for the person who stands here all day, weaving warmth out of discomfort. You wrap another band of wool, tension in your shoulders so thick you could weave that into yarn. All around, the longhouse continues its gentle drone. Embers curling, patter of footsteps, distant grunt of work, yawning for dinner. The fire crackles, the loom groans, your body hums. Eventually, someone yanks you from the loom's hold. your shoulders loosening like springs released. It's cooking time again. You shuffle toward the hearth, strained but resigned. You spoon low broth into bowls, steam curling up in lazy spirals. A whiff of roots and fish skin. It creeps under your nose, fills your lungs, drags your mood downward. You carry those bowls across the floorboards, untended wood that darts splinters into bare feet. You wonder, how did skin not heal faster? Then you wonder how any of you weren't already heat-addled or frost-shriveled. You set down the bowls, drip stains like breadcrumbs heading home. A toddler tugs your cloak, soft wool, heavy with soot and sweat. You dip the ladle again. You hope they don't mind how gray the stew is. They probably don't. Nobody notices anymore. Soup served. You return to washing. Cold water sloshes in a bucket. You scrub bowls with sand and moss. Modern dish soap would make you cry with gratitude. Your hands turn prune-like with each dip, fingers chapped. You grit your teeth at every scrape. The survivor in you says, keep going. The dreamer in you whispers, cotton pajamas. Finally, the scrubbed dishes sit on a rack. Lean, ragged, farmed clay sweated into shape. You lean against the rack, exhausted beyond exhaustion, aware that more chores still swirl out there. You pant, shoulders weighted, hands still trembling. In that pause, you find the goat's head nearby. It rubs its nuzzle against your calf. You kneel slowly, placing a hand on its fuzzy neck. Its warmth radiates, a soft reprieve. Nothing grand, just shared fatigue, just shared endurance, just two animals trying to find comfort before the night sets in again. You shake off the midday fog of cooking and weaving as the longhouse settles into that unique, smoky, lung-draining hush that signals the end of chores. The dawn-to-dusk wind has finally dropped, leaving only the gentle flicker of the central hearth fire as the heart of the household. You draw closer, blinking in the dim glow, shedding the day's grime with deliberate slowness. Each motion, a bruise of awareness in muscles that are beginning to whisper of fatigue. The straw pile benches around the hearth are worn and uneven, molded to the bottoms of generations of villagers. You ease onto one beside your grumpy sibling, someone you're beginning to understand without speaking. A dull ache spreads through your backside as the brittle straw pokes into your posture-weary back. The firelight warms your wrists, reddening goose flesh into dull comfort. It's less an embrace and more, this is what you get for surviving so far. But it counts. Nearby, the communal wooden bowl awaits. It's scarred from decades of ladling, a testament to morning gruels, midday stews, and tonight's hopeful offering. As you lift the bowl, your fingers find the rough ridges of wood grain, dry, unsanded, and slightly sticky with remnants of broth. The spoon, curved from bone, glides through the stew with a quiet scrape. You draw it to your lips, tasting the same flavors that have sustained your village-bound life for hours, days, perhaps too many to count. The broth is lukewarm, no longer scalding, but still holding the promise of warmth. You sip slowly, entirely aware of its sandy texture, the grit of spoiled barley or the fragment of overcooked root vegetable. It's less rustic delicacy, and more, you'll survive, barely. You swallow, and the warmth trickles down your throat in hesitant waves. Around you, other villagers settle into their evening routines. Louder spoon clinks, slow swallows that echo in the emptied space. A nosy neighbor, eyes crinkled in their intentional half-smile, nudges their bowl slightly closer to yours. You feel the silent suggestion, share your meager portion. You hesitate, thumb grazing the rim, before scooping another mouthful. It's communal living, but a communal lesson in how much you can tolerate discomfort. A child, your younger cousin perhaps, wiggles close and flicks a strand of hose-like hair across your arm. You feel the tender, chilly brush of fingertips, unaware of their own cold. You adjust, pulling your cloak tighter, and for a moment, The familial closeness softens the raw edges of your discomfort. But only for a moment, because the world is still damp, and the straw bench still prickly, and the fire still threatening to sputter. You notice the smoke curling up from the center of the hearth, blackening the rafters, drifting down your neck, making your eyes sting. This fire is mercurial. It's warm one moment, smothered the next. You nudge the logs with your foot, banking it slowly. The survival art you've learned, carefully testing embers with a nudge, a shift, an anxious breath. You're becoming proficient, or perhaps just resigned. Voices float in low waves, quiet laughter, a soft grunt of satisfaction, the rustle of cloak fabric as bodies shift. These are the hours of gossip, the injured calf, the time someone found a four-legged snack halfway back from the fjord, the whispered suspicion of the chieftain's gold-hungry gaze. No one shouts. There is no drama, just the slow crescendo of shared stories, each one sustaining the communal fabric with quiet reassurance. You feel the simmer of contentment. You're alive, seated among these rough souls. You've endured. And yet, there's still that niggling ache behind your ribs, where the cold settled earlier and left its mark. You draw your cloak closer, hoping the wool layers will work overnight. You press into the straw, the sharp pieces momentarily unforgiving, and wonder if anyone will notice if you move slightly. Your beloved goat, somewhere at the edge of the circle, pads closer. Its cold breath meets your ankle. You reach downward, letting it press into your leg. A small comfort, furry reassurance in this sea of discomfort. It nuzzles your hand, and in that quiet moment, you find yourself almost at peace. The evening light dims. The smoke intensifies as embers fade. You know you'll have to wake soon, haul more wood, fend off frostbite, draw water. But in this stretch between day's labor and night's hush, it almost feels like rest. Almost. The bowl empties, the fire banked, the stories trailing off. You sit up, shoulders slumping with tired acceptance. You're aware of how raw your throat feels, how ache-prone your limbs have become, how every sensory moment is both a burden and evidence of survival. As the clinks and whispers fade, you sense the longhouse preparing for the final night stretch. The benches creak as people stand, the smoke settles into the rafters, and the fire heats one last ember. You lean back, feeling the slow drift toward evening's lull, and realize you've survived another round of discomfort and gossip. And as you adjust your cloak, readying for the slow descent into night's waterless chill and bed's scratchy straw, you can already taste the promise of stew tomorrow, or what counts as stew. You finally step away from the hearth's warming glow, the heavy rut in your shoulders begging for the evening's small mercy. The longhouse hushes around you, the straw shifting, the goat's soft rustles, the ember glow dappling the low beams. Your skin still buzzes from the day's chores, but as you ease back to the sleeping end of the hall, a different discomfort sets in, a creeping cold that the fire no longer dares to challenge. You shuffle along the uneven floor, wrapped in scratchy wool and grease-stained cloak. Each footstep presses straw deeper into your soles, releasing dusty scents that mingle with smoke and something less definable. Your nostrils flare. It's like stepping into a taxidermist's closet, if the taxidermist lived in a barn and forgot to clean. The low ceiling, your nightly companion, seems even starker in the dim light. You twist to avoid a hanging beam, nearly toppling your goat companion, Bruni, who grumbles and nudges you back upright with surprising tenderness. That goat has a sense of timing, sniffing your cloak like it's ripe for stealing, yet curling against your hip as a shape of warmth. Ahead, your sleeping pile beckons. Rough-hewn boards topped with straw, layered with old animal hides. With each shift, the straw crackles like bones underneath you. You sink into the makeshift mattress, each movement measured, as if you're wading through cold honey. But there's no sinking into comfort here. The boards hold you up, and the straw pokes through at every contact point. Your breath hisses in rhythm, coiling around your head like a ghost. You wonder if the straw carries the footprints of 1,000 restless sleepers before you, hands clinging to cracks in the boards, knees wrestling with cold, spines stiff in protest. Maybe that's why it smells faintly of sweat and regret, layered like fingerprints. You pull your cloak tighter across your chest, thumb flicking a loose goose-down stuffing that escaped through a tear. It's like receiving intimate pinpricks with every shift. Then you remember the ritual, shared bedding, a necessity you never asked for. You can feel the sleeper next to you, rising, twisting, probably your grumpy sibling, still muttering curses into the straw. Their arm smacks your side like a flail, testing where your body ends and theirs begins. Fire banking earlier left you with a fading ember bed at the hearth. That slow burn was meant to hold the chill at bay through the night. But now that ember is barely glowing, less warm hearth and more dying candle in a bathtub, you'll wake up half frozen in a few hours, and nothing says medieval insomnia like goosebumps sliding down your spine. To help stave off frostbite in your toes, you shuffle Bruni behind you, pressing her against the exposed footboard. She squawks indignantly, but sighs when her body heat hits. There's something soothing in that bristly warmth, like a small, furry heater with attitude. In modern terms, it's like wrestling a feral heated blanket that bleats. You tuck your feet close to your belly, knees pressed in. Anatomical yoga of survival. You inch closer to the center, hoping to share body heat with the goat. But there's always that one sibling hogging the prime oven position. You can almost hear her mind calculating temperature ratios, plotting a takeover of the coziest cluster. Above, smoke drifts, curling toward the gap in the roof. You feel it graze your cheeks and nostrils, a familiar sting. It's not unpleasant. It's home. Like that dusty incense smell in a cheap modern candle, only real and with more particulate. The smoke's warmth is whispered comfort, though you know it'll steal sleep faster than the cold. Stray embers popping in the hearth. Somewhere, a pot upside down on coals, still radiating that stale stew heat. You catch a wisp of something crusty, probably last night's broth. There's comfort in routine smells, even if they're gone wrong. You inhale deeply, letting it all fold around you. Your cloak is twisted halfway off one shoulder. You adjust it, once, twice, before resigning to its current, permanently askew shape. Unequal heat distribution is part of the nightly calculus. Maybe tonight your right shoulder gets warmth, and your left stays frosty. It's survival mathematics at 2 a.m. The beam overhead creaks, wood settling, overnight contraction. You hold your breath, tracking the sound. Could be anything. A branch tapping, a weasel skittering for scraps, a spirit, if you believe in those tales. Bruni shifts again, nosing your elbow. You feel her heartbeat vibrate against your ribs, solid reassurance in a restless world. Sleep teases you with distant drowsy edges, then yanks away. Your skin prickles. The cold circulates again. You roll, drawing knees closer, trying not to disturb the sibling's elbow jammed against your hip. Shared misery is a pact. You both suffer the scratchy straw and stale smoke, but at least you're not alone. You twist again, aligning your spine with the boards to even out pressure. It's oddly like repositioning yourself on a cheap modern mattress to avoid that one hard lump. Only here, the lump is wood, and it's inescapable. Faint sounds filter through. The goat's soft bleat, a distant grunt from the firekeeper's shack. Maybe your sibling mumbling. Still. More smoke curls in. You taste it on your lips, a persistent, ashy dryness, like breathing through an old fireplace filter. Your mind drifts through the day. The spoonful of goat's milk, the icy trek to the latrine, the nosy neighbor's sideways glance. But now, each memory is weighted with bodily ache, the tingle of cold fingers, the tightness in your calves, the roughness of wool chafing your neck. Each memory bleeds into your bones. You sense the night deepening. The ember bed must be near collapse, no more heat to coax. You might wake soon to rekindle the fire, poke the coals. Or perhaps you'll lie here, teeth chattering under your breath, calculating survival minutes. The longhouse settles around you, a slow inhalation, a soft sigh. The goat shifts again, muffled hoof on straw. You pretend that's your own breath, exhaling into numb thighs, coaxing your body to relax. It flinches, but the shuffle loosens cords in your muscles. It's that time when sleep edges close, but not enough to cloak consciousness. You sense the siblings sighing too, the scent of their breath like sour barley. You're not alone in the discomfort. Shared suffering makes bedtime less lonely, but no more comfortable. You adjust once more, nestling into your goose-down stuffing hole and imagining the luxury of a modern pillow. But luxury is a foreign concept out here. This is life. Harrowing, lunging, painfully real, and yet sleepy. So very sleepy. The fire finally splutters. Air hisses into lifeless coals. The hearthlight dims to darkness, leaving just sliver glow dancing on the wall. In that last flicker, you trace the rough carvings in the wood. Intentional patterns or just years of chipped accidents? Doesn't matter. The shadows cover them now. You hug Bruni, your living warmth probe, into your chest. She resists, but then relaxes, weight settling. You close your eyes, letting the goat's steady pulse hum a lullaby against your ribs. Outside, the wind sighs through thatch, a low hum of nature's midnight song. You feel it against your back, cold fingers tracing a path, trying to find a weakness in the walls. The longhouse breaths around you. You mimic its slow rhythm, loosening every knot of tension. Your senses dim. The straw smells bland now. Just straw. The smoke is comfortable, holding the chill at bay. The pressure of lying so still balances out warmth and ache. It's not comfort, but it's a reprieve. You drift further, deeper. Your thoughts blur into warmth and breath and straw. You almost chuckle at the thought. Medieval life is not luxurious. It's livable-ish. It's rough, loud, cold, smoky, loud. Did I mention loud? And still somehow sleep-worthy. Your last conscious thought is gratitude for this goat heater, this sibling who doesn't steal all the heat, this ember glow that held a spark of life. And here, in the dark, you feel safe enough. You stir before fully falling asleep, just enough that the embers sinking in the hearth send a shiver racing through your body. The longhouse is thinner now, breathable like a sad makeshift winter tent. That moment when warmth abandons you is always the cruelest, like a best friend offering a brief embrace, then slipping away. You shift toward Bruni, but she's already curled up tight, hogging all the warmth she can muster. You poke her with a gentle elbow, hoping for another degree of heat. Instead, she shifts away, nuzzling farther into the siblings' mound. Survival of the snuggest in full swing. You touch her coat, bristly, still warm. One goat-based attempt at refuge isn't enough. The cold arrives like a stealthy invader. Your back feels the draft first, the wall beams cooling like pale marble. You draw your cloak tighter, pulling every scrap of wool around your torso. Modern term, you're trying to cocoon. But wool is scratchy, clinging to sweat and goose-down stuffing poking through. It's less cocoon, more medieval burrito gone wrong. The night air slinks around the roof's gap, whispering its approach. Each breath you exhale meets an icy barrier at your raised chest. It's like breathing through frosted glass. You see it in your mind, even if the world's dark. You remember the ember banking ritual, a final desperate shove of coals under the pot, burying glowing scraps beneath ash. It was meant to hold the chill at bay, but hardly ever lasts until dawn. You wonder, did the night get the best of you? Has the ember bed collapsed completely? With a groan so soft you almost doubt it left your lungs, you stretch your arm to reach the hearth. Every movement heats your muscles, almost pleasantly, until the cold rushes to greet every inch of travel. Your skin prickles. You fold your hand into the straw, feel dust and grit brush your fingers. The straw is cold, no warmth seeping up, but it's comfort in texture, even if the comfort feels like denial. You dig your fingers toward the coals. They're still glowing, not red, but dim orange, like the afterglow of embarrassment. You push ash aside, coaxing the embers into a small flame. A flicker, a spark. The warmth blossoms in small waves, first at your hand, then creeping up your arm as you move the embers under the pot. The pot had been upside down, holding heat like a deflated balloon. Now it's roofed over coals again, and ash settles. The warmth is hopeful, but damp wood crackles and falls back. You brush ash off your fingers, warmth pressed into your palms like treasure. A small victory over dark and cold. You ease back onto the straw, accepting partial warmth. It's enough to touch your spine's base, but your feet stay icy. Couldn't reach them without waking the sibling. You settle for half warmth, mumbling a silent apology to cold toes everywhere. You notice the goat's breath fogging in the low light, tiny clouds like theatrical smoke machines in a Viking indie play. She coughs softly, or maybe sighs. You scratch behind her ear, marveling how she somehow still smells warmer than your tunic. The sibling shifts again, letting out a puff of breath on your shoulder. Shared suffering, a silent pact, but still, a pawn in their nightly temperature game. You sigh into the straw. The sound is a mossy exhale in the silent hall. Your cloak has twisted enough times to turn your shoulder into a no-go zone. You roll slowly, each squeak of straw like a squeaky hinge. It sets your spine gently but firmly against boards, a 2-foot-long pillow of discomfort. But beneath the weight, the cold eases. Board-to-body contact is inviting. You pause. The night is tall, and your breath seems tiny. Each inhale is colder than the last. Your cheek feels slightly numbed. A small patch of skin feels like it isn't entirely yours anymore, but borrowed from ice. You imagine frost forming, small crystals at the edge of eyelids, icy fringe of medieval reality. You draw your knees up, ankles steepling like a child tucking into a thermal onesie. Feet lock beneath cold metal-like board. The sensation is distant, bearable as long as you don't think about it. Somehow, detachment is the survival method. You don't think about cold, you just endure cold. You imagine modern life, fuzzy socks, heated blankets, thermostat whispers. It feels like a fairy tale. You've entered a minimalist challenge. Survive cold without tech. And you're failing. But you're here, still breathing. That counts. You press your cheek to the straw. Natural pillow trying to fill modern standards. You feel dust tickling your beard if you have one. The sensory immersion is cloying, but sleepy. The straw's scratchiness is legible, understandable. It's tangible sleep. The goat's side touches yours. It is warmth and awkward proximity. Her rib cage expands, the breath pushing straw into your hip. You allow the contact, body heat triangulation. The sibling rotates again, elbow pressing into your ribs. You let it. You're woven into the living quilt of the longhouse. The ember glow dims again. You listen. The crackle died away. It's quiet. Too quiet. The cold reasserts itself. You hold your breath, but the air keeps coming. Your lungs ache for warmth. You cradle them inside the cloak, trying to capture every precious molecule. You picture your morning, when the firekeeper returns, tired and crusty, shoveling coals into that pot again. The ritual is repetitive, but you're not yet dead. Barely alive is a Viking achievement. Modern mind would call it survival. You sigh. The sounds of night intensify. The thatch rattles. Distant owls scratch on wood. Footsteps of a goat outside. Or inside. You're not sure. The cold creeps back, but you found acceptance. Sleep edges closer. Your mind flickers through gentle images. Goat warmth. Ember glows. Your siblings' presence. You hold on to them, weaving into a drowsy safety net. Your fingers trail the cloak beard. Straw bed is lumpy. Sibling snores softly, a reassuring rumble tone. Bruni breathes on you, a goat lullaby. Tentative warmth returns as your body falls deeper into oblivion. The cold is less urgent now, more background noise, like hearing a neighbor's distant snore in a dorm. You're still cold, but it's distant cold. Your last conscious thought. I'm still here. I made it. The longhouse hums. Ember dreams drift. You wake in the uneasy half-light with the distant echo of creaking timbers, exactly where you left yourself, tucked half inside that bitterly cold goat fur, nose grazing the sharp tang of bone-dry straw. The longhouse's low hum, an odd lullaby of shifting dirt floors and settling walls, wraps around you. You realize the nightmares you drifted through weren't just in your head. They still linger in the half-waking ache behind your eyes. Your heart beats with that slow thump of relief. Okay, you're not being chased by wolves, yet everything still feels just off-kilter. The warmth from the fading fire on the communal hearth has gone limp overnight, like a promise broken. You can almost feel the sting of it retreating down your spine. Shadows pool in every corner, and your breath emerges in ragged clouds, like faulty smoke trying to warn you. Your limbs tremble. Not icy exactly, but roughed up in a way that whispers, you might be alive, but not thriving. A distant snort from your dear but flatulent goat confirms the world is still turning, but she's more pitifully warm than you are. You'd trade half your dignity to crawl into her tangled fleece right now. Your dreams replay fragments. The distant howl, that slick rat's snarl, the sharp snap of something breaking in the dark. Real and imagined blur together. Those dreams know your waking vulnerabilities. The draft scraping your bones. The uneven surface underfoot. The horrifying realization that solace is temporary. Your tongue grazes your cracked lips. You're thirsty, so dry your jaw feels like hollowed wood. You reach for the communal cup beside you, filled with barely warmed goat's milk from midday. A slick taste remains. Tinning, gross, but better than nothing. Somehow it fills the empty hole inside you that the cold gouged out. The straw beneath you irritates every patch of your skin. It whispers against your back, sharp as a memory you can't name. You shift, feeling every tuft and splinter. The goat snorts again, disgruntled at your squirming. At least someone's complaining louder than you. Every now and then, the building groans. A subtle wheeze like the longhouse itself is dreaming. You're not alone in your suffering. Your grumpy sibling, off to the side, snores softly. Their complaint is the only rhythm quieter than your own racing pulse. Nearby, the nosy neighbor's chicken scratches purposefully at the earth, as if digging out your nightmares. You'd pay to have a normal sleep cycle, but here, normal means reeking of dung and fear. In the corner, once vibrant caches of chopped wood lie in disarray. Yesterday's firewood, still damp under icy drips from the thatched roof. If you squint into the gloom, you might make out the outline of the fire bank, spent coals half buried in ash. You can't scrape it for embers yet. It's too cold, too dead. And besides, the smoke would wake everyone. The longhouse demands patience, subtlety. You must coax warmth, not steal it. Your stomach lurches. It whispers that evening stew was nothing more than watery gruel with limp root shreds, but those noodles still swirl in your mind. Hot enough, just, to let you drift off. You almost miss the rasping sound of someone else lying awake. Someone meaning anyone in this crowded slumber party gone wrong. You try to blot out the cold. You press your hands to your chest, willing body heat to gather like coals. You tug the goat fur tighter. You burrow deeper into the straw, trying to hide from the chill creeping in through the earthen floor. It's not working, and each breath brings shards of ice. In the gloom, you glimpse movement. A rat, bold as brass, scuttles along your foot and makes off with a crumb of stale bread that someone dropped last night. You'd curse if you weren't too tired. Instead, your mind shrugs. Even vermin get to forage. You just forage for warmth and hoped for dreams. Every sense is tuned to discomfort. The rough slumber under you, the twitch of breeze through the roof, distant drip, drip, drip of thawing snow sliding off the thatch. Each sound resonates like a distant warning. You're not done suffering. This is the right pitch of terror for history, but wrong timing for sleep. Your chest tightens. In your semi-dream, your best goat stands on hind legs, bleating mournfully while pointing a cloven hoof at you. Something about your failure to keep the hearth alive. You jerk, half rising, and the straw shifts. The goat grumbles an aggrieved cough as if to say, "I saved you, don't get dramatic." She's loyal that way. Your thoughts swirl. Frostbite, parasites, structural collapse, illness. The worst parts of this village are not mythical. They're active threats. Yet they're part of the everyday soundtrack. A sibling's snore, the goat's wheeze, the rat's victory. You're living through all this, and you're still here. Your eyelids flutter back and forth, stuck between wakefulness and oblivion. It's not peaceful, but it's where history meets your primal need. Rest. You realize your body is fighting to stay warm, to stay quiet, to wait for dawn so breakfast warms your belly. If breakfast ever shows up. The night hums on. The longhouse shifts. You fight fantasies of wolves licking your toes through the floor. Those fantasies retreat when you remember your actual enemies. Cold and neglect and basic bodily functions left that far. Better than wild predators. Barely. The hearth shadows ripple. A single glowing ember ignites in your memory. Keep breathing. Keep waiting. You press your cheek to that echo. Sleep hovers just out of reach. And as the familiar dread wraps you in its uneven arms, you breathe shallowly, counting comfort by absence. The absence of hunger, still there, but manageable. The absence of immediate danger. Predators stay outside. The absence of daylight, your only hope for warmth. You tuck the goat fur under your chin. The straw rustles. You become aware of another presence stirring. Your goat shifting weight, your sibling shifting weight, the longhouse shifting weight, all breathing, existing, surviving. Even the rats sleep in fits. You embrace that thin thread of solidarity. You're not alone. History's not always a lonely place. You have neighbors, even if they're grumpy. Slowly, slowly, exhaustion seeps in. You let the cold seep in too. It's part of tonight's contract. You cradle your body in layers. Fur, straw, breath. You sink deeper into the fugue. And as you stand on the verge of sleep, half hungry, half terrified, half relieved, you realize you've survived the night's cruelest hour. For now. Your body's steady rhythm carries you forward. And as the final ember of consciousness flickers out, you find yourself drifting, ever so gently, toward chapter 20, surviving the night, waiting just beyond the darkness. You barely remember closing your eyes as the embers of the communal fire faded into dull orange glows. A fragile hush settles across the longhouse, broken only by distant creaks in the roof timbers and the mischievous rustle of feathers from a goat who's decided your bedding is her new playground. The stale air tastes sharp, like old stew reheated one too many times. And tonight, it's all that's between you and freezing oblivion. You can feel the cold creeping in again, fingering its way through every stitch of your wool layers and animal hide cloak. That warmth you'd soaked up during dinner has betrayed you. Or maybe sharebed math was never your strong suit. Here, seconds drag slower than hours. Every exhale shivers in the gloom like a ghost, curling around your face before vanishing. Your bones feel hollow, as if you're not so much lying in straw as suspended above ice. You try to shift, but the straw squeaks and settles under your weight, reminding you that it's doing better at holding heat than you are. Your blanket, really, a goat-down quilt, repurposed by necessity, is so thin you can practically feel the draft licking your calves. In the corner, the grumpy sibling you've been silently competing with for bedding space emits a low snore, not peaceful, not restful, more like the battle cry of a hog-toothed warrior snoring through frostbite. You envy their oblivion. Beside them, the beloved goat sighs, relocating itself in search of your last whimper of body heat. Somehow, the goat has more agency than you do. Silence becomes its own weight. You hear the wooden walls groaning as the night air seeps through cracks wider than your will to survive this long. A distant root moans, probably your imagination, or maybe the house itself is complaining about another Viking winter. Above, the thatch sways with a wind that sounds far too enthusiastic for such a fragile structure. Every time it rattles, you flinch. Your mind drifts to frostbite. Fingers and toes succumbing first, then cheeks, nose, earlobes. You press your hands between your thighs, tuck feet under straw, coil yourself into as small a ball as possible. You remember fire banking, piling embers under fresh logs earlier tonight. But now it's coals buried in ash, smothered as if in defeat. The scent of smoke is gone. Only the acrid memory remains. You think of the goat, of your grumpy sibling, of the nosy neighbor who'd given you that judging glare earlier when you reeked of goat musk. You think of every chore yet undone, every cold bucket of water waiting in the barn. You hear the goat shift again, huffing against your calf. Luck feels slim. Home sweet home is a cruel joke whispered by Frost. You wonder what century modern therapy would call this. Exposure, deprivation, rustic resilience. But nobody here cares for labels. They just endure. And so do you. Your breath slows, measured, shallow. Breathing becomes counting, each cycle a minimum effort not to forget that you're still alive. You feel the straws under you, rough and brittle. The wisp-thin crackle when something moves near the floor. Maybe it's a rat, maybe goat. You don't want to know. Every sound echoes loud. The cold is humbling. Even your worst nightmares from the middle evening seem postcard cozy compared to this reality. In that moment, you experience clarity. You might survive the night, but do you really want to? And yet here you are, blindly sucked into tomorrow's chores and miseries. Slowly, the night grinds on, but you hold on, toes warmish, fingers numb but not gone, mind flickering between hopelessness and relief. This is not heroism. It's not survival with a capital S. It's clutching at thin blankets, counting breath after breath, and hoping the dawn comes soon enough to bring a gruel-soaked second chance. And as you teeter on the edge of consciousness, something stirs. The sound of the eldest sibling rolling, fidgeting, reaching for that goat again. Straw shifts. A faint groan from the walls. Then, silence. You realize your own heart thumps, matching the pace of the house's creaking lullaby. Something about it. It's quiet enough now. Not safe, but quiet. You've made it this far. Barely. And as the embers in the hearth sigh again, you sink deeper into the straw, breath shallow and steady, knowing that morning, grim, cold, and barely edible, waits for you now. You've survived. For now.